mengikuti acara TICMI Indonesia SIPF Capital Market International Conference 2021 bertopikkan atau berjudul Protection of Investors in the Capital Market pada hari ini 17 Juni tahun 2021. Sebelum kita mulai acara, izinkan saya, Poppy Putra, Head of Programs dari The Indonesia Capital Market Institute, untuk menyampaikan online rules, juga rundown yang akan kita ikuti bersama pada pagi hari ini. Online rules yang kami minta Bapak dan Ibu untuk ikuti bersama demi kelancaran acara kita pagi hari ini adalah: yang pertama, kami mohon perkenan Bapak dan Ibu sekalian untuk dapat memute-kan mikrofon, tetapi dapat meng-on-kan kamera supaya kita semua mendapatkan feel bahwa kita berkumpul di sebuah ruangan bersama-sama walaupun dalam ruangan virtual. Bapak dan Ibu dapat mendownload virtual yang sudah disampaikan pada chat Zoom oleh teman-teman panitia. Untuk pertanyaan, jika Bapak Ibu ingin bertanya sebelum sesi Q&A, Bapak dan Ibu dapat mengetik pertanyaan pada fitur chat pada Zoom. Dan jika Bapak Ibu juga telah bergabung kepada kanal YouTube TICMI, yaitu TICMI Edu, Bapak dan Ibu juga dapat mengetik pertanyaan pada fitur komen di kanal YouTube TICMI. Nama, bagi Bapak Ibu sekalian, kami mohon perkenannya untuk dapat merename nama yang tertera pada Zoom menjadi nama instansi Bapak dan Ibu atau nama perguruan tinggi Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, underscore nama Bapak Ibu semuanya. Dan untuk technical problems, jika Bapak dan Ibu memiliki kendala teknis, Bapak dan Ibu dapat mengetik kendala tersebut di fitur chat. Untuk rundown acara kita pagi hari ini, setelah saya membuka acara, membacakan online rules juga rundown, kita akan bersama-sama menyanyikan lagu Indonesia Raya yang akan dipimpin oleh dirigen, yaitu Ibu Eva Aprilia. Kemudian kita akan bersama-sama mendengarkan welcoming speech yang akan dibacakan oleh Ibu Meti Yusantiati sebagai Direktur Utama The Indonesia Capital Market Institute, dilanjutkan oleh Bapak Narotama Arianto sebagai Direktur Utama Indonesia Securities Investor Protection Fund. Kemudian kita akan mendengarkan keynote speech yang akan dibacakan oleh Bapak Inarno Jayadi sebagai Direktur Utama PT Bursa Efek Indonesia, dan akan dilanjutkan oleh keynote speech sekaligus pembukaan acara oleh Bapak Insinyur Hussein MM sebagai Kepala Eksekutif Pengawas Pasar Modal sekaligus Dewan Komisioner dari Otoritas Jasa Keuangan. Selanjutnya, kita akan masuk kepada sesi International Conference yang akan dimulai oleh pembicara pertama, yaitu Miss Josephine Wang dari Securities Investor Protection Corporation Amerika Serikat, dan dilanjutkan oleh Bapak Sarjito sebagai Deputy Commissioner Bidang Edukasi dan Perlindungan Konsumen Otoritas Jasa Keuangan, dan dilanjutkan kembali oleh Bapak Narotama Arianto sebagai Direktur Utama Indonesia Securities Investor Protection Fund. Sesi tanya jawab kemudian akan dipimpin oleh Ibu Risa Evenita Rustam sebagai Direktur Keuangan dan Sumber Daya Manusia dari Bursa Efek Indonesia. Setelah acara International Conference, maka dilanjutkan dengan sesi call for paper yang akan diisi oleh hasil-hasil kajian dari peneliti terbaik di Indonesia yang akan akan mempresentasikan tentang penelitian atau hasil kajian terkini topik-topik di pasar modal. Demikian Bapak dan Ibu jalannya acara untuk pagi hari ini. Izinkan saya menyapa tamu-tamu terhormat kami. Sebelum kita menyanyikan Indonesia Raya, selamat pagi kepada Bapak Hussein Sebagai Kepala Eksekutif Pengawas Pasar Modal juga merangkap anggota Dewan Komisioner Otoritas Jasa Keuangan. Selamat pagi Pak Hussein.
Ibu.
Selamat pagi Pak.
Pagi.
Izinkan saya juga menyapa Bapak Tirta Segara sebagai anggota Dewan Komisioner Bidang Edukasi dan Perlindungan Konsumen dari Otoritas Jasa Keuangan. Selamat pagi Pak Tirta
Selamat
Segara.
pagi Bu Popi, terima kasih.
Selamat pagi Pak. Izinkan saya juga menyapa para Deputi Komisioner, Kepala Departemen maupun Direktur dari Otoritas Jasa Keuangan. Selamat pagi kepada Bapak Inarno Jayadi sebagai Direktur Utama PT Bursa Efek Indonesia. Selamat pagi Pak Inarno.
Selamat pagi Mbak Popi. Selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi. Izinkan saya menyapa Bapak Sunandar sebagai Direktur Utama PT Clearing Penjaminan Efek Indonesia. Selamat pagi Pak Sunandar.
Selamat pagi Bu Popi, Bapak Ibu semuanya.
Izinkan saya menyapa Bapak Urip Budi Prasetyo sebagai Direktur Utama PT Kustodian Sentral Efek Indonesia. Selamat pagi Pak Urip.
Selamat pagi Mbak Popi.
Selamat pagi Pak. Selamat pagi juga kepada jajaran direksi dari PT Bursa Efek Indonesia, PT Clearing Penjaminan Efek Indonesia, juga PT Kustodian Sentral Efek Indonesia. Selamat pagi kepada Ibu Meti Yusantiani dan Ibu Syara Soekarno sebagai direksi dari The Indonesia Capital Market Institute. Selamat pagi Ibu-ibu cantik. Selamat pagi kepada Bapak Nartama Arianto dan Ibu Mariska Aritani sebagai direksi Indonesia Securities Investor Protection Fund. Kemudian tidak lupa saya mengucapkan selamat pagi kepada direksi dari anak usaha SRO. Selamat pagi kepada para narasumber dan moderator, kepada Ibu Rosmayani S. Effendi sebagai Ketua Umum Asosiasi Bank Kustodian Indonesia, kepada Bapak Prihatmo Harimulyanto sebagai Ketua Dewan Presidium Dewan Asosiasi Pelaku Reksadana dan Investasi Indonesia, kepada Ibu Dani E. Tribuana sebagai Wakil Ketua Badan Arbitrase Pasar Modal Indonesia, kepada direksi dari Bank Kustodian dan Sekuritas yang telah menyempatkan diri untuk hadir di pagi hari ini. Kemudian tidak lupa saya menyambut peserta dari luar negeri, yaitu dari The Canadian Investor Protection Fund, dari UK Financial Services Compensation Scheme, dari China Securities Investor Protection Fund, dari Japan Investor Protection Fund, dari Taiwan Securities and Futures Investor Protection Center, dari Australia Securities Exchanges Guarantee Corporation Limited, dan dari Fogain, Spain. Good morning to you all. Welcome to the TICMI Indonesia SIPF Capital Market International Conference 2021 this morning. Juga tidak lupa saya mengucapkan selamat datang kepada Bapak Ibu peserta yang berbahagia. Izinkan saya pagi hari ini untuk memulai acara. Kami persilakan kepada Ibu Eva Apriliani sebagai dirigen untuk memimpin menyanyikan lagu Indonesia Raya. Kepada Ibu Eva, kami persilakan.
pertukaran informasi dan diskusi tentang pasar modal. Demikian kami sampaikan. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih kepada Ibu Meti atas welcoming speech-nya di pagi hari ini. Selanjutnya, kami persilahkan kepada Bapak Narotama Arianto sebagai Direktur Utama Indonesia Securities Investor Protection Fund untuk menyampaikan welcoming speech. Kepada Bapak Narotama Arianto, kami persilahkan.
Terima kasih, Bu Popi. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yang terhormat Kepala Eksekutif Pengawas Pasar Modal OJK, Bapak Husein. Yang terhormat anggota Dewan Komisioner OJK yang membidangi edukasi dan perlindungan konsumen, Bapak Tirta Segara. Yang terhormat Deputi Komisioner Bidang Edukasi dan Perlindungan Konsumen OJK, Bapak Sajito. Yang terhormat Presiden dan CEO Securities Investor Protection Corporation atau SIPC, Ibu Josephine Weng beserta tim. Yang terhormat Direktur Utama PT Bursa Efek Indonesia, Bapak Inano Jayadi. Yang terhormat Direktur Keuangan dan SDM BI, Ibu Risa Effenita Rustam. Yang terhormat Direktur Utama PT Clearing Penjaminan Efek Indonesia, Bapak Sunandar. Yang terhormat Direktur Utama PT Kasediaan Sentral Efek Indonesia, Bapak Urip Budi Prasetyo. Yang terhormat Direktur Utama TICMI, Ibu Meti Yusantiati. Dan yang saya hormati para perwakilan anggota DPP, serta Bapak dan Ibu hadirin yang berbahagia. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi waktu Indonesia dan selamat malam waktu Amerika Serikat. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Salam Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan, dan salam sehat selalu buat kita semua. Marilah kita panjatkan puji dan syukur kehadiran Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala karena atas rahmat dan hidayahnya dan ridhonya kita dapat hadir bersama pada hari ini dalam event Capital Market International Conference tahun 2021. Pertama, perkenankan kami menyampaikan apresiasi dan ucapan terima kasih kepada OJK dan SRO atas dukungan dan arahannya yang diberikan kepada kami selama proses persiapan dan penyelenggaraan event ini. Kami sangat berharap kolaborasi dengan para stakeholder pasar modal ini dapat terus berlangsung pada acara-acara selanjutnya. Apresiasi sebesar-besarnya juga kami sampaikan kepada TICMI dan merupakan partner kami dalam mempersiapkan dalam menyelesaikan acara hari ini. Dengan kapasitas dan pengalaman yang dipunya oleh teman-teman di TICMI dalam menyelenggarakan event berkelas internasional, membuat kami yakin untuk terus bekerjasama dalam menyelenggarakan acara ini. Kerjasama yang terjalin antara kami, anak usaha SRO ini, bukan hanya untuk meningkatkan hubungan baik di antara kami, namun lebih dari itu, yaitu kami berharap acara ini dapat bermanfaat dan turut berkontribusi yang positif bagi pertumbuhan pasar modal Indonesia ke depannya. Here enough, I would also like to welcome Ms. Josephine Weng, President and CEO of the US SIPC and her team. I really appreciate her support and cooperation to be here today as an honored speaker for this event. I believe we are considerably grateful having such a valuable opportunity to absorb SIPC knowledge and experience as an expert investor protection institution who already involved in providing investor protection to the US stock market for decades. Thank you, Ms. Wang and team. Hadirin yang berbahagia, di tengah pandemi saat ini, pasar modal Indonesia juga terkena dampaknya. Sempat kita ingat di awal pandemi tahun 2020, IHSG sempat menyentuh angka kisaran 3.900. Namun perlahan tapi pasti kita dapat berkat usaha dan doa Bapak Ibu semua, selaku stakeholder di pasar modal. IHSG kembali naik dan akselerasi pertumbuhan investor meningkat cukup cepat. Tercatat pada tahun 2020, pertumbuhan investor pasar modal secara year on year meningkat 56% dari 2,48 juta menjadi 3,88 juta. Bahkan hingga pertengahan Maret 2021 kemarin, peningkatan investor dibandingkan akhir Desember 2020 sudah mencapai 27%. Peningkatan jumlah investor tersebut tentunya dipengaruhi oleh banyak faktor. Salah satunya yaitu meningkatnya kepercayaan masyarakat untuk berinvestasi di pasar modal Indonesia. Adanya OJK sebagai regulator dan berbagai kebijakan, adanya SRO dan memberikan perlindungan kepada investor adalah poin utama. Namun, jangan lupa juga bahwa pasar modal kita juga memiliki lembaga pelindungan investor, yaitu kami, yaitu Indonesia SIPF. Keberadaan kami memang mungkin belum terasa di masa kondisi seperti ini, namun kami selalu siap memberikan perlindungan kapanpun dibutuhkan. Dengan pembelajaran yang nanti akan disampaikan oleh Ibu Josephine Weng, kami berharap untuk dapat menimba ilmu sebanyak-banyaknya tentang pentingnya lembaga perlindungan investor pada pasar modal. Lalu dapat pula kita belajar dari kasus-kasus yang pernah ditangani oleh US ICPC, sehingga nantinya kita dapat mengadopsi berbagai kebijakan yang sekiranya dapat diterapkan di Indonesia, serta bagaimana seharusnya konsep perlindungan investor yang baik dan efektif dalam sebuah industri pasar modal. Hal ini tentunya akan menambah pengetahuan kami untuk dapat menciptakan iklim berinvestasi di pasar modal dengan rasa aman dan nyaman. Selain itu, kita juga akan mendapatkan pemaparan dari Bapak Sajito mengenai perlindungan konsumen di industri keuangan, khususnya pasar modal, yang selama ini sudah dijalankan oleh OJK di bidang edukasi dan perlindungan konsumen. Berbagai kasus yang pernah ditangani oleh OJK dapat memberikan pembelajaran kepada kami dalam memberikan perlindungan yang optimal kepada investor. Harapan ke depan, pembelajaran dari Ibu Josephine dan Bapak Sajito dapat menjadi masukan dan referensi bagi pasar modal Indonesia dalam mengembangkan konsep perlindungan investor agar menjadi lebih kuat dan berguna untuk kemaslahatan pasar modal Indonesia sehingga memberikan rasa aman dan nyaman bagi para investor Indonesia. Demikian yang dapat saya sampaikan. Selamat bergabung untuk para peserta kegiatan dan selamat mengikuti jalannya acara hari ini hingga selesai nanti. Sekian, atas perhatian dan kesempatan yang telah diberikan, kami ucapkan terima kasih. Salam sehat dan salam semangat. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih kepada Bapak Narotama Arianto untuk welcoming speech-nya di pagi hari ini. Selanjutnya, kami mau perkenan Bapak Inarno Jayadi sebagai Direktur Utama PT Bursa Efek Indonesia untuk menyampaikan keynote speech pada acara TICMI Indonesia SIPF Capital Market International Conference 2021. Kepada Bapak Inarno Jayadi, kami persilahkan.
Terima kasih Mbak Popi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi dan salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Yang saya hormati Kepala Eksekutif Pengawas Pasar Modal Otoritas Jasa Keuangan Bapak Husen dan jajaran. Yang saya hormati anggota Dewan Komisioner EBK Pak Tirta Segara dan jajaran, Sarjito juga, selamat pagi Pak. Presiden dan CEO Securities Investor Corporation, Ms. Josephine Wang, Direktur Direktur Utama SRO ya Pak Sunandar dan Pak Urip ya, Direktur Utama Indonesia Capital Market Institute Ibu Meti Yusantiati, lalu juga Direktur Utama SIPF Bapak Narotama, serta seluruh peserta dan tamu undangan yang hadir secara fisik dan virtual. First of all, I will give a warm welcome to Ms. Josephine Wang and the participant from 7 countries. Welcome, good morning. Thank you for being here in the international event being held by TICMI and SIPF. Yeah, thank you very much for being here. And I'm sorry that I will give the presentation, short presentation in Bahasa Indonesia. Thank you. Bapak Ibu, seluruh peserta dan tamu undangan ya, yang saya hormati, kita lihat bahwasanya dalam slide pertama ya, kita lihat bahwasanya memang tahun 2020 kita mengalami situasi yang cukup berat ya, tadi sudah diutarakan oleh Pak Narotama ya. Dan namun kita mesti menyadari bahwasanya sampai saat ini walaupun beberapa minggu terakhir ini adanya penurunan dalam indeks harga saham gabungan, namun saat ini alhamdulillah indeks harga saham gabungan telah mulai kembali pulih, kepercayaan juga mulai kembali pulih, sehingga alhamdulillah per 11 Juni 2021 minggu ini indeks sudah naik 1,95%. Ya. Kalau kita lihat dari di bawah slide tersebut, kita lihat bahwasanya transaksi harian juga sudah mulai bagus ya, rata-rata yaitu 13,6 triliun per hari ya, naik 47% dibandingkan tahun lalu sebesar 9,21 triliun per hari ya. Namun tetap ya kita mesti selalu waspada ya. Kenapa kita mesti waspada? Nanti akan saya jelaskan dalam presentasi selanjutnya. Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati, kalau kita lihat slide yang kedua ya, kita lihat dari 2011 gitu. Dari 2011 itu walaupun 2020 mengalami penurunan yang drastis ya karena adanya pandemi, tadi juga Pak Narotama sudah menjelaskan ya. Namun kita lihat bahwasanya pada secara 10 tahun itu trennya itu tetap masih positif, alhamdulillah ya. Begitu juga Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati, kita berikutnya ke slide yang berikutnya ketiga ya, kita lihat bahwasanya tingginya tersebut itu didukung oleh pertumbuhan investor ya, pertumbuhan investor terutama investor retail ya. Kita lihat bahwasanya ke sebelumnya ya, kita lihat bahwasanya rata-rata nilai perdagangan harian itu mencapai 13 triliun, kita lihat di slide tersebut ya, melonjak 2 kali lipat dalam 5 tahun terakhir ya. Lalu kalau kita lihat juga dari frekuensi, itu juga Bapak Ibu sekalian, itu juga sudah mencapai 1,2 juta, 1,3 juta per hari ya. Dan itu merupakan alhamdulillah tertinggi di kawasan ASEAN selama 3 tahun terakhir. Kita ingat ya, kita bahwasanya kita mengurangi periode settlement dari T3 ke T2 itu adalah awal baliknya kita itu leading di ASEAN. Juga kita lihat bahwasanya volume perdagangan juga mencapai luar biasa ya, lebih dari 18 miliar lembar saham per hari ya. Dan ini pencapaian rekor high ya selama ini. Dan ini merupakan tentunya ini semuanya bisa tercapai tentunya partisipasi dari seluruh stakeholder ya. Terima kasih kepada investor retail, kepada OJK terutama, dan juga kepada SRO yang lain dan anak-anak perusahaan. Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati, kalau kita lihat dari slide berikutnya, kita lihat dari supply ya, supply side kita ya. Per 11 Juni 2021 telah terdapat 20 perusahaan yang mencatatkan sahamnya di bursa dengan nilai fundraise mencapai 3,7 triliun ya. Ini menghantarkan jumlah perusahaan di bursa itu saat ini mencapai 732 perusahaan ya. Dan ini juga mencapai rekor juga buat kita ya. Jadi terima kasih nih ya. Kita mencapai rekor tertinggi juga di ASEAN ya. Berdasarkan EY Global IPO Trend Report, Indonesia masih masuk ke dalam 10 besar aktivitas pencatatan saham tertinggi di dunia selama 3 tahun berturut-turut ya, 2018 sampai dengan 2020. Sementara itu menurut laporan periode kuartal 1 2021 ya, jumlah IPO Indonesia juga masih tertinggi di antara bursa ASEAN. Pertumbuhan ini diharapkan masih berjalan terus ya positif di tahun 2021 karena di pipeline kita ya saat ini masih ada 22 calon perusahaan tercatat ya yang masih dalam proses ya. Mungkin juga Bapak Ibu sekalian mendengar bahwasanya startup akan cukup besar akan masuk, ya mudah-mudahan bisa listing di tahun ini ya. Saat ini kita masih melakukan diskusi intens dengan OJK dan stakeholder untuk merumuskan regulasi yang memungkinkan para startup tersebut melakukan IPO melantai di bursa kita. Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati, tadi kita lihat bahwasanya 2020 yang cukup berat itu mulai menumbuhkan confidence yang cukup bagus ya. Hal ini disebabkan karena juga memang alhamdulillah ya, ini pertumbuhan daripada investor retail sangat bagus sekali ya. Ini kita lihat dalam slide ini ya, kita lihat bahwasanya trennya sangat positif ya. Sampai akhir bulan Mei 2021 jumlah investor telah mencapai 2,4 juta investor saham dan juga 5,37 juta investor pasar modal ya. Dengan kata lain terdapat peningkatan sebesar 42% untuk investor saham dan juga 38% untuk investor pasar modal dari angka terakhir tahun 2020. Rata-rata jumlah investor aktif yang bertransaksi hingga akhir Mei ini mencapai 203.000 investor per hari atau tumbuh 113% dari rata-rata tahun sebelumnya. Nah, bagaimana dengan ownership-nya, kepemilikan investor? Tahun 2020 itu adalah merupakan tahun kebangkitan investor domestik, ya, terutama investor retail kita. Pada bagian grafik bagian kanan, ya, dapat dilihat kanan bawah, dapat terlihat bahwa investor retail membukukan aktivitas transaksi yang besar, ya, yakni 48,4% dari total rata-rata transaksi harian sebesar 9,2 triliun di tahun 2020. Ya. Presentasi ini melonjak untuk pertama kalinya di atas 40% dalam 5 tahun terakhir. Ya. Dan ini berlanjut di tahun 2021. Alhamdulillah. Di mana dominasi investor retail semakin terlihat dengan porsi mencapai 60% per akhir Mei 2021. Ya. Alhamdulillah kita lihat ya, hampir 60%. Artinya apa? Bahwasanya investor retail sudah merupakan rumah sendiri di pasar modal kita ya. Kalau kita flashback kembali ke belakang ya, beberapa tahun ke belakang, kita masih didominasi oleh foreign investor. Saat ini, alhamdulillah, investor retail sudah mendominasi. Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati ya, peningkatan jumlah investor ini merupakan hasil dari upaya Bursa Efek Indonesia yang terus-menerus dalam melakukan sosialisasi, ya tentunya juga dibantu dengan anak-anak perusahaan, TICMI, juga SIPF, kita melakukan sosialisasi, edukasi bersama juga dengan KPI dan KSI, dan tentunya ajakan oleh OJK juga, ya. Kita selama 2020 ya, itu aktivitas literasi inklusi dan itu kita lakukan hampir 9.000 ya, 9.000 aktivitas ya. Dengan jumlah peserta mencapai 1,32 juta orang. Jadi dan hampir 80.000 itu membuka SID baru. Dari seluruh transaksi tersebut itu 7.300-nya kita lakukan secara online ya, dengan peserta 1,2 ya. Jadi memang secara fisik masih kita lakukan pada saat awal-awal sebelum pandemi. Setelah itu betul-betul kita lakukan secara virtual mencapai 7.300 kegiatan dalam waktu kemarin itu. Tentunya ini juga terima kasih kepada teknologi yang membuat kita bisa melakukan hal ini, dan ternyata memang pesertanya makin besar dan juga intensitasnya, kegiatannya juga semakin besar. Ya. BEI juga telah meluncurkan inovasi edukasi digital pada pertengahan Maret yang lalu, Salah satunya itu adalah IDX Virtual 360 ya. Partisipan atau investor bisa masuk ke itu galeri digital kita tanpa kunjungan secara fisik, cukup melalui virtual ya. Lalu juga halaman edukasi melalui website kompetisi IDX GI Ton ya sebagai bentuk apresiasi terhadap galeri investasi. Lalu juga kita membuat galeri investasi edukasi digital Bursa Efek Indonesia ya. Jadi tentunya ini kita melakukan lebih banyak dengan pandemi ini kita lakukan menggunakan media digital. Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati ya, untuk menyelenggarakan perdagangan yang teratur, wajar dan efisien, BEI menjalankan sejumlah inisiatif ya serta mengikuti regulasi yang ada di pasar modal Indonesia untuk terus melakukan perlindungan investor ya. Beberapa hal inisiatif tersebut yaitu adalah menjaga likuiditas dan mekanisme perdagangan melalui pengaturan minimum free float ya, memperkuat pengawasan transaksi dan pengembangan inisiatif seperti penyesuaian pre-closing, pengambilan keputusan yang adil melalui peraturan mengenai rapat umum pemegang saham atau RUPS tentunya, transaction fairness melalui pengaturan harga transaksi, ketepatan waktu pelaksanaan aksi korporasi, keterlibatan pihak independen dan kebijakan terkait trading halt apabila dibutuhkan seperti pada awal pandemi 2020. Lalu juga transparan dalam menyediakan informasi melalui IDXnet SPE dan juga sistem XBRL, dan terakhir juga kami memiliki badan-badan independen untuk mendukung, mengawasi, dan melakukan audit melalui seperti komite-komite yang ada di SRO. Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati, untuk terus memperkuat layanan dan menjaga momentum pertumbuhan pasar modal Indonesia, BI bersama OJK dan SRO telah meluncurkan serangkaian inisiatif strategis di tahun 2020. Seluruh inisiatif ini bertujuan untuk terus melakukan pendalaman pasar, penguatan layanan kepada calon perusahaan, perluasan infrastruktur perdagangan untuk pasar obligasi, serta penguatan infrastruktur keterbukaan informasi dalam rangka meningkatkan perlindungan investor pasar modal Indonesia. BI bersama OJK juga telah menyelesaikan roadmap pasar modal syariah untuk 5 tahun ke depan sebagai upaya penguatan dan pendalaman pasar modal berbasis syariah di Indonesia. Sementara di 2021 ini, BI memiliki fokus untuk meningkatkan pendalaman pasar modal yang diikuti dengan peningkatan efisiensi proses dan transparansi. Beberapa inisiatif utama yang dilakukan meliputi misalnya pengembangan pengaturan untuk mengakomodir IPO ya, e-IPO dari calon perusahaan teknologi besar, kemudian pengembangan portal edukasi investor, lalu juga penyempurnaan mekanisme perdagangan ya, pre-closing, market order, periodic order ya. Pengembangan ini tentunya bertujuan untuk mengembangkan industri pasar modal yang lebih baik, semakin terpercaya, teratur, wajar, dan efisien ya. Demikian yang dapat kami sampaikan. Semoga kegiatan webinar hari ini dapat memberikan insight positif bagi kita semua dan kedepannya mampu memberikan kontribusi dalam memajukan pasar modal dan perekonomian Indonesia. Terima kasih. Wabillahi taufik wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya kembalikan kepada Poppy. Terima kasih.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih banyak Pak Inarno atas perkenannya membawakan keynote speech di pagi hari ini. Selanjutnya kami mohon perkenan dari Bapak Husen sebagai Kepala Eksekutif Pengawas Pasar Modal sekaligus merangkap anggota Dewan Komisioner dari Otoritas Jasa Keuangan untuk dapat membawakan keynote speech. Juga kami mohon perkenannya untuk dapat membuka acara TICMI Indonesia SIPF Capital Market International Conference 2021 di pagi hari ini. Kepada Bapak Hussein, kami persilahkan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, salam, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Yang saya hormati Bapak Tirta Segara, anggota Dewan Komisioner Bidang Edukasi dan Perlindungan Konsumen, Otoritas Jasa Keuangan. Bapak Inarno Jayadi, Direktur Utama PT Bursa Efek Indonesia, beserta jajaran. Bapak Sunandar, Direktur Utama PT Clearing Penjaminan Efek Indonesia, beserta jajaran. Bapak Urip Budi Prasetyo, Direktur Utama PT Kustodian Sentra Efek Indonesia, beserta jajaran. Para Ibu Meti Yusantiati, Direktur Utama PT Indonesia Capital Market Institute, beserta jajaran. Para narasumber pada acara conference pada pagi hari ini, yaitu Miss Josephine Wong, President and CEO Securities Investor Protection Corporation. Welcome, Miss Josephine. It is an honor for us to have you in today's conference. I hope your presentation will provide valuable insight for the participants and especially for the Indonesian capital market. Bapak Sarjito, Ketua Deputi Komisioner Bidang Edukasi dan Perlindungan Konsumen Otoritas Jasa Keuangan, Bapak Narotama Haryanto, Direktur Utama Indonesia Securities Investor Protection Fund, yang tidak lupa juga moderator Ibu Risa Evenita Rustam. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, allow me to deliver in bahasa. Pertama-tama marilah kita panjatkan puji dan syukur kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala yang telah memberikan rahmat, nikmat dan karunia-Nya sehingga kita semua dapat berkumpul pada pagi hari ini dalam acara Indonesia SIPF Capital Market International Conference 2021 dengan tema Protection of Investors in the Capital Market. Dalam kesempatan yang baik ini, saya ingin mengucapkan terima kasih dan apresiasi yang setinggi-tingginya kepada the Indonesia Capital Market Institute or TICMI yang secara konsisten setiap tahun menyelenggarakan konferensi berskala internasional. Meskipun kita sadari bahwa pandemi COVID-19 hingga saat ini belum selesai, namun saya berharap semangat dan optimisme kita untuk terus mendorong sosialisasi dan edukasi pasar modal kepada masyarakat dapat terus terjaga. Dan hal ini tidak dapat berjalan dengan baik tanpa dukungan dari seluruh stakeholder industri pasar modal, masuk dari rekan-rekan SRO, Self-Regulatory Organization, Indonesian Exchange, Clearing House, and also Custodian Central, TICMI, dan tentunya juga Indonesia Securities Investor Protection Fund. Bapak, Ibu, para hadirin sekalian yang berbahagia, pada kegiatan conference kali ini, TICMI mengangkat topik yang sangat menarik, yakni Protection of Investors in the Capital Market atau perlindungan investor di industri pasar modal, khususnya di Indonesia. Namun sebelum saya mengulas lebih jauh tentang aspek perlindungan investor di bidang pasar modal, izinkan saya terlebih dahulu menyampaikan beberapa update perkembangan industri pasar modal di Indonesia hingga saat ini. Tadi sudah disampaikan cukup banyak oleh Pak Inarno dari Bursa Efek Indonesia, itu pada tahun 2020 kemarin, walaupun pasar modal kita mengalami tekanan akibat dampak pandemi COVID-19, hal ini tidak hanya terjadi di Indonesia, melainkan juga di seluruh negara di dunia. Pada bulan Maret tahun 2020 tahun lalu, indeks harga saham gabungan atau IHSG sempat mencapai titik terendahnya pada posisi 3.937 atau turun sebesar hampir 37,5% secara year to date. Sementara nilai market capitalization juga turun menjadi sebesar 4.556 triliun atau turun lebih dari 37% secara year to date. Namun demikian, melalui berbagai langkah strategis yang diambil OJK, yang terutama difokuskan pada 3 aspek, yaitu relaksasi bagi pelaku industri, pengendalian volatilitas dan menjaga kestabilan pasar modal dan sistem keuangan, serta kemudahan perizinan dan penyampaian dokumen, serta pelaporan. Serta didukung kerja keras seluruh stakeholder di pasar modal kita patut bersyukur bahwa pasar modal Indonesia mampu melalui tantangan tersebut dengan baik. Dan saat ini terus menunjukkan perkembangan yang positif. Sebagai gambaran, sampai pada posisi 4 Juni 2021, IHSG sudah kembali menguat dan berada pada posisi 6.065 poin atau sekitar naik sebesar 1,4% secara year to date. Sementara itu, nilai market capitalization juga telah meningkat menjadi lebih dari 7.176 triliun atau naik sebesar hampir 3% secara year to date. Bapak, Ibu, serta para hadirin yang kami hormati, di tengah tren kinerja positif pasar modal Indonesia saat ini, ada satu fakta yang menarik perhatian banyak kalangan, tak terkecuali Bapak Presiden Republik Indonesia, Bapak Haji Joko Widodo, yaitu pertumbuhan jumlah investor domestik yang begitu besar. Tadi juga sudah disampaikan oleh Pak Inarno, jumlah SID investor yang pada tahun 2018 dan 2019 hanya tercatat masing-masing sebanyak 1,6 juta dan 2,4 juta, maka pada akhir tahun 2020 kemarin telah melonjak menjadi sekitar 3,8 juta. Bahkan hingga per 31 Mei kemarin di 2021, jumlahnya sudah kembali meningkat menjadi 5,3 juta SID atau meningkat sebesar lebih dari 38% year to date. Berdasarkan data statistik dari keseluruhan jumlah investor tersebut, 58% didominasi oleh millennial generation dan Gen Z yang berumur di bawah 30 tahun, disusul oleh investor yang berumur 31 sampai 40 tahun sebanyak 21,6% dan 19% sisanya adalah investor berumur di atas 40 tahun. Oleh karenanya menjadi sangat relevan jika dalam konferensi pada pagi hari ini kita mengusung topik mengenai perlindungan investor pasar modal. OJK tentu sangat mengapresiasi peningkatan jumlah investor di pasar modal Indonesia yang menjadi salah satu indikator keberhasilan dari proses atau kegiatan atau inisiatif untuk sosialisasi, khususnya terhadap investor retail. Namun demikian, di tengah pencapaian tersebut, kembali saya ingin mengingatkan agar kita jangan berpuas diri dan menjadi lengah. Hal ini mengingat perkembangan ini akan membawa konsekuensi logis untuk peningkatan tugas dan tanggung jawab kita untuk terus menggalakkan upaya perlindungan investor dari setiap bentuk perilaku fraud yang dilakukan oleh oknum yang tidak bertanggung jawab. Ini satu tanggung jawab yang makin besar bagi kita semua untuk melakukan segala aktivitas di pasar modal dengan lebih hati-hati, lebih baik, dan meningkatkan juga pengawasan di dalam perlindungan terhadap investor. Di samping itu, kita juga semua harus terus memberikan pemahaman dan edukasi kepada masyarakat dan investor agar mereka selalu senantiasa memahami dan berhati-hati dalam mengambil keputusan investasinya. Tentunya, di samping ada potensi keuntungan, yang juga perlu kita perhatikan adalah potensi risiko yang mungkin terjadi. Bapak, Ibu, serta para hadirin yang berbahagia, dalam upaya untuk meningkatkan kepercayaan dan melindungi kepentingan investor, pada tahun 2020 kemarin, OJK telah mengambil serangkaian kebijakan, baik berupa penerbitan regulasi maupun peningkatan kegiatan pengawasan. Antara lain, pertama menerbitkan keputusan nomor Cap 69/D04/2020 terkait penetapan batasan paling tinggi pembayaran ganti rugi untuk setiap pemodal dan setiap kustodian dengan menggunakan dana perlindungan pemodal sebagai pelaksanaan amanat ketentuan pasal 23 ayat 3 POJK nomor 49 POJK 04/2016 tentang dana perlindungan pemodal yang substansinya adalah meningkatkan batas maksimal ganti rugi per pemodal menjadi 100 juta per pemodal menjadi 200 juta per pemodal. Dan batas maksimal ganti rugi per kustodian dari sebanyak 50 miliar menjadi 100 miliar per kustodian. Kedua, menerbitkan POJK nomor 65 tahun 2020 tentang pengembalian keuntungan tidak sah dan dana kompensasi kerugian investor pasar modal atau dikenal dengan disbursement dan disbursement fund. Peraturan ini diharapkan dapat memulihkan hak-hak investor yang dirugikan akibat adanya pelanggaran terhadap peraturan perundang-undangan di bidang pasar modal dengan cara memberikan perintah tertulis kepada pelaku pelanggaran untuk mengembalikan sejumlah keuntungan yang diperoleh atau kerugian yang dihindari serta tidak sah atau melawan hukum atau restorative justice and or remedial action. Di samping itu, dari sisi pengawasan, dalam rangka melindungi kepentingan investor, selama periode tahun 2020 kemarin, OJK telah banyak melakukan tindakan supervisory action seperti tindakan penghentian kegiatan tertentu terhadap perusahaan efek, suspensi transaksi reksadana atau pembuatan produk investasi baru terhadap manajer investasi, pembekuan izin terhadap wakil perantara pedagang efek, dan beberapa tindakan tertentu lainnya. Dengan adanya berbagai kebijakan tersebut, kami berharap investor pasar modal di Indonesia akan semakin terlindungi dan merasa aman serta nyaman dalam berinvestasi di pasar modal Indonesia. Dan tentunya banyak sekali juga pelanggaran-pelanggaran yang terkait dengan market conduct yang dilakukan oleh para pelaku di industri jasa keuangan kita, khususnya di pasar modal. Hal ini juga menjadi salah satu tugas, makanya dalam hal ini ada Pasar Jito tadi dan juga tentunya kehadiran Pak Tirta Segara sebagai ADK yang mempunyai bidang tugas untuk edukasi dan perlindungan konsumen. Ini sangat relevan pada pagi hari ini. OJK sendiri akan terus senantiasa mensosialisasikan kebijakan tersebut kepada semua lapisan masyarakat agar kepercayaan investor semakin meningkat. Namun demikian, hal ini tidak akan berjalan efektif tanpa dukungan dari semua pihak agar kita semua bersama-sama dan bergabung untuk melawan segala bentuk fraud demi terwujudnya pasar modal Indonesia yang teratur, wajar, efisien, dan melindungi kepentingan investor sebagaimana amanat dari pasal 4 Undang-Undang Nomor 8 Tahun 1995 tentang pasar modal. Bapak, Ibu, serta hadirin yang terhormat, sekali lagi saya ingin menyampaikan apresiasi kepada TICMI yang telah menyelenggarakan conference pada pagi hari ini dengan menghadirkan para narasumber yang sangat kompeten dalam bidang perlindungan investor. Saya berharap TICMI dapat terus konsisten menyelenggarakan sosialisasi dan edukasi, termasuk terkait perlindungan investor kepada seluruh stakeholder di pasar modal Indonesia. Setelah pada bulan Maret kemarin, sukses menyelenggarakan webinar dengan topik yang sama bagi seluruh hakim di Indonesia. Saya berharap kegiatan webinar sejenis dapat terus dilakukan dengan mengundang para aparat penegak hukum lainnya, seperti Polri dan Kejaksaan, serta mungkin dengan BPK atau dengan PPATK, atau bahkan juga dengan KPK. Akhir kata, semoga kegiatan Indonesia SIPF Capital Market International Conference 2021 ini dapat memberikan manfaat bagi kita semua terutama kami juga berharap kegiatan ini dapat berlanjut setiap tahunnya bagi kemajuan pasar modal Indonesia. Dan tentu dengan semangat baru dan optimisme yang tinggi dari para peserta, panitia, penyelenggara, dan semua pihak yang terlibat. Demikian sambutan dari saya, dan dengan mengucapkan Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, acara Indonesia SIPF Capital Market International Conference tahun 2021 pada pagi hari ini resmi saya buka. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih kepada Bapak Husen. Kami mohon perkenannya Bapak dan Ibu semuanya yang hadir di ruangan ini, sudah ada hampir 600 orang dan juga ada di kanal YouTube. Kita bersama-sama membuka mic sejenak, membuka video sejenak, kita menghitung bersama, kita countdown bersama-sama untuk membuka acara di pagi hari ini, dan selanjutnya akan dilakukan foto bersama. Kepada teman-teman panitia, video mungkin bisa dimulai. Mungkin bisa diulang teman-teman, tadi tampilannya tidak maksimal. Kita pause bersama. Oke, kami mohon perkenan kepada Bapak Husen, Bapak Inarno, setelah bersama dengan seluruh jajaran pimpinan dari OJK maupun dari Self-Regulatory Organization untuk sejenak berfoto bersama. Teman-teman panitia, kami mohon perkenannya untuk bisa mengambil alih untuk mengaba-aba, memberikan aba-aba.
Ya, sesi foto akan dimulai. Baik, saya hitung. 3, 2, 1. Ya, berikan senyum terbaiknya Bapak Ibu. Saya ulangi kembali. 1, 2, 3. Ya, sekali lagi untuk halaman berikutnya. Baik, yang belum menyalakan silakan. Ya, saya berikan aba-aba. 3, 2, 1. Halaman selanjutnya. 3, 2, 1. Senyum semangatnya Bapak Ibu. 1, 2, 3. Ya, baik. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih kepada teman-teman panitia yang telah memberikan aba-aba untuk foto bersama. Terima kasih kepada Bapak Husen dan Pak Inarno serta seluruh jajaran pimpinan dari OJK maupun Self-Regulatory Organization atas perkenannya untuk foto bersama. Selanjutnya, kita akan masuk ke acara yang kita tunggu-tunggu pagi hari ini, yaitu International Conference yang akan membahas tentang Protection of Investors in the Capital Market. Nah, pagi hari Oke, mohon maaf saya belum di-unmute tadi. Terima kasih kepada Bapak Husen dan Bapak Inarno serta seluruh jajaran pimpinan dari OJK dan SRO perkenannya untuk foto bersama. Selanjutnya di pagi hari ini telah tiba saatnya kita sampai pada International Conference yang akan membahas tentang Protection of Investors in the Capital Market. International Conference ini akan dipandu atau dimoderatori oleh Ibu Risa Effendita Rustam sebagai Director of Finance and Human Resources dari Indonesia Stock Exchange. Izinkan saya untuk membacakan CV dari Ibu Risa Evenita Rustam. Teman-teman, oke. Ibu Risa was appointed as Director of Finance and Human Resources of IDX at the Annual General Meeting of Shareholders on June 29, 2018. She commenced her career in the capital market in 1989 as a staff officer in HSBC Custodial Services. She joined PT Baring Securities Indonesia in 1991 as settlements manager, appointed as director of PT Ing Securities Indonesia in 1999, and served as director and COO of PT Macquarie Securitas Indonesia from 2004 to 2016. She was actively involved in various working committees and task forces of OJK, IDX, KSE, and KP from 1998 to 2016. She was appointed as one of the G20 Women Empowerment Advocates from Indonesia recently. Kemudian she graduated from Gajah Mada University in Economics and holds certification in Audit Committee Practices from the Indonesian Institute of Audit Committee or IKAI. Kepada Ibu Risa Evenita Rustam, kami persilakan untuk memandu acara International Conference pada pagi hari ini. Silakan Ibu.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Mbak Poppy. Our distinguished guest, Pak Hussein, Executive Head of Capital Market, concurrently member of the Board of Commissioner of Indonesian Financial Services Authority or OJK, Pak Tita Segara, member of Board of Commissioner in charge of Consumer Education and Protection of OJK, Bapak Ibu from OJK, Pak Inarno Jayadi, my boss, Chairman of the Indonesian Stock Exchange, Pak Urip Prasetyo, Chairman of the Indonesian Security Central Depository, Pak Sunandar, Chairman of Indonesian Clearing and Guarantee Corporation, my fellow directors of self-regulatory organization, Ibu Meti Yusantiati, President Director of TICMI, our honorable speakers, Ibu Josephine Wang from US SIPC, Bapak Sarjito, Deputy Commissioner for Education and Consumer Protection of OJK, and Bapak Narotama Arianto, President Director of Indonesian SIPF, and all the respectable participants of this webinar. Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to the conference. I'm Risa Rustam from IDX and I am your moderator today. The conference topic is protection of investors in the capital market, a very important matters for all investors. Investor protection mechanism need to be in place to handle, to name a few, dispute between parties, misrepresentation by intermediaries and institutions, accountability in case of frauds, insider trading, and so on. Before we get started, I would like to remind all participants that if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box. We will have a Q&A session at the end of all presentations, and I will select a few questions and bring them up. We will have 3 presentations in this webinar. The first is from Ibu Josephine Wang, President and CEO of Securities Investor Protection Corporation, or SIPC, who is joining us from Washington, D.C. She will provide us with an introduction to SIPC as well as to investor protection scheme in the United States. The second presentation is from Bapak Sarjito, Deputy Commissioner of Education and Consumer Protection of Indonesia Financial Services Authority or OJK on the topic of Indonesian capital market consumer protection mechanism. The third presentation is from Bapak Narotama Arianto, President Director of Indonesia SIPF, who will introduce us to Indonesia SIPF and talk about Indonesian Capital Market Investor Protection Fund atau Dana Perlindungan Pemodal, among other things. But before we start with the first presentation, I would like to introduce you to our first guest speaker, Ibu Josephine Wang. She joined SIPC as a staff attorney in 1983. In 2004, she became the General Counsel and Secretary of SIPC, and in 2019, became the President of and CEO of SIPC. Before joining SIPC, Ms. Wang was an attorney with the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. While on the SIPC staff, Ms. Wang worked on some of the larger liquidations under the Securities Investor Protection Act, or SIPA. As General Counsel, she served as SIPC's Chief Legal Officer. As President and CEO, she oversees the day-to-day operations of SIPC and is the main point of contact with SIPC's Board of Directors. Ms. Wang is also the co-author of a comprehensive article on stockbroker liquidation under SIPA, 12 Cardozo Law Review 509 from 1990, and the author of On the Road to Recovery, Victims of the Madoff Fraud. 8 International In-House Counsel Journal 3141 in winter 2015. She has also been a speaker and on behalf of SIPC at various programs sponsored by, among others, the International Belgrade Stock Exchange, the American Bar Association, the Futures Industry Association Law and Compliance Division, the International Women's Insolvency and Restructuring Confederation, the George Washington University Center for Law, Economics and Finance, and the Benjamin N. Cardozo School of Law. She is a graduate of the Georgetown University Law Center in Washington, D.C. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Ibu Josephine Wang. Hi, Ibu Josephine.
Hello, and thank you very much.
It's a great honor to have you presenting in this conference this morning. So I would like to thank you for being here with all of us. You have the next 30 minutes to deliver your presentation. The time is yours.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. And thank you very much for the invitation on behalf of SIPC. It's our privilege and honor to be here with you all at this morning's conference. Before I start my presentation, I was asked to say a few words about SIPC. I do need to issue our standard disclaimer, which is any expressions or any opinions rather expressed during this presentation are my own and not necessarily those of SIPC or its staff. So we do have, or I do have a PowerPoint, if that could be brought up. Great, and we'll start with the next slide, please. So what is SIPC, or the Securities Investor Protection Corporation?
Belum tahu.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yes,
please. All right, thank you. So what is SIPC? It is a nonprofit membership organization that was created by Congress in 1970. It is not a government agency, but it serves an important public interest, which is the protection of customers of failed securities broker-dealers. Next slide, please. Although it's not a government agency, it is created, as I said, under a federal statute called the Securities Investor Protection Act. Its policies are set by a 7-member board of directors. 5 of those directors are appointed by the President of the United States and confirmed by the Senate. A 6th member of the board is from the Treasury Department, and a 7th member is from the Federal Reserve. Next, please. As a membership organization, its members include almost all registered securities broker-dealers in the United States. Currently, there are about 3,400 members of SIPC. The membership does not include a number of organizations such as those you see listed here, banks, foreign broker-dealers, that is, those broker-dealers who do exclusively a foreign business. Next, please. When SIPC started in 1970, it had no office, it had no funds, but under the statute that created it, it was required within 120 days of December 1970 to come up with a fund that would have at least $75 million in it. And so all of the SIPC members got together and they in fact raised the money. Each had to pay an assessment of 1/8 of 1% of its revenues. And so 120 days after December 30th, 1970, SIPC began with a fund of $75 million. Today, that fund has grown to at least $3.9 billion. Each member has to pay an assessment, what's called an assessment, which is equal to 15 basis points or 0.15% of its net operating revenue. The board, the SIPC board, has set a target of reaching $5 billion. In the event that our funds should become insufficient for SIPC's purposes, we are authorized to borrow from the United States Treasury up to $2.5 billion, which SIPC has never had to do in its history. Next slide, please. Now, as I said, SIPC is not a government agency, but it has many features of a government agency, not only because of its important public purpose, but it relies heavily on the securities regulators, such as the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, or FINRA, which is a self-regulatory organization that oversees the activities of securities broker-dealers. Because we are not a government agency, we do not have any authority to investigate our member broker-dealers. So if there's a firm in trouble, we cannot go into that firm and review or examine its books and records. We have to rely on the SEC and FINRA to do that. The SEC has some oversight authority over SIPC. For example, we have the authority to adopt bylaws and rules, but those bylaws and rules have to be approved by the SEC. And occasionally the SEC will examine SIPC's activities. But there is no one other than the SEC who can force SIPC to start a liquidation proceeding. But even so, the SEC, in order to compel SIPC to start a proceeding, must go into court to do so. Next slide, please. So the SEC or FINRA will do the investigation of a troubled securities broker-dealer, and it will refer a firm to us. But SIPC independently has to review that information to decide for itself that there is a firm that's in financial trouble and that it cannot meet its obligations to customers. So under the SIPA, we have to make certain determinations. We have to decide or determine that a firm has failed or is in danger of failing to meet its obligations to customers. We have to determine that a firm either is insolvent, that it's already the subject of a pending liquidation proceeding, that it's not in compliance with its financial responsibility requirements under the federal securities laws, or that it can't even show compliance with those requirements. Next slide, please. If SIPC determines that a firm should be put in liquidation, the way that it does that is to go into federal district court and to ask the court to place the firm in SIPA liquidation and to appoint a trustee and counsel to administer that proceeding. If the court, and of course the firm can oppose our application, and if it does, there will be a hearing held in very short order during which the court will decide whether or not there are grounds to liquidate the firm. If the court grants SIPC's application, the case gets removed to the United States Bankruptcy Court, where it's very much like any other bankruptcy proceeding, except for the special SIPA protection. And SIPC itself will work very closely with the trustee to administer the proceeding. In some cases, the trustee is an outside trustee appointed usually from a law firm. In some smaller cases, SIPC itself can serve as trustee. Next slide, please. Once a firm is placed in liquidation and there's a proceeding before the bankruptcy court, the first thing that a trustee will try to do is to make a bulk transfer of customer accounts. That is, transfer the customer accounts to another viable firm. This, of course, is the preferred alternative because it allows customers to get back into their accounts as quickly as possible to get access to their property. But that's not always possible because perhaps maybe the failed firm's books and records are in very poor condition and there isn't another firm out there that's willing to take over the accounts. And if that's the case, then we start what is referred to as the claims process, which means that we have to publish notice of the liquidation, and we also have to mail copies of that notice and claim forms to customers. By filing a claim, this is the way that customers can get access to the cash and securities that were on deposit or that are owed to them by the broker-dealer. And there is a time limit for them to do so, generally 6 months from the date of publication of the notice of liquidation. Next slide, please. So how do we protect customers? Well, first of all, we try to give back to customers all of their customer property, but that means that the trustee has to collect whatever's on hand at the broker-dealer and any customer property that may have been removed usually unlawfully from customer accounts. But SIPC doesn't protect every loss. So we don't protect market loss. So for example, if your securities have dropped substantially in value, we will give you back your securities at whatever their market value is. We don't protect losses based on a breach of contract. And perhaps most significantly, we don't protect claims for fraud or misrepresentation. So for example, if your broker guarantees that your investment will go up, 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 but by the time the firm fails, the value of your investment has dropped substantially, that loss, that misrepresentation that the broker has made to you is not a loss that we can protect. We will simply give you back your security, whatever its market value is on the filing date, the date that we file the application for the customer protective order. So the customer bears the risk of any gain, of any loss, but also receives the value of any gain of that security. Next slide, please. So the trustee's role is, among other things, to protect, to gather, to collect all property. And there are at least two types of property. One is called customer property, and the other is the general estate. The customer property is defined under SIPA. It's defined under the law. And basically it amounts to all property held by the broker-dealer for its customers. All property, all cash and securities entrusted by customers to their broker-dealer. Everything else is general estate. So for example, the value of the building, anything that's in the broker-dealer's proprietary accounts. Next slide, please. And you see here examples of what is customer property and what is general estate. As I said, customer property is all of the securities, the stocks, the bonds, as well as the cash that are held in the customer's account, insurance proceeds, collateral posted with financial institutions. It also includes stolen customer property. So property that should be in the possession of the broker-dealer, but for some reason it is no longer there. Maybe it's been converted by the broker-dealer. The trustee can go out and try to recapture that customer property for the benefit of customers. The general estate includes assets that are held in the firm's proprietary accounts, assets held by the broker for its own benefit. Next slide, please. So there's something called customer name securities, which generally refers to physical certificates with the customer's name on it. That is not widely, that's pretty much no longer used widely because it's more difficult to transfer them. So generally, securities are more likely to be held in street name. But if you have a customer name security that is non-negotiable, transferable only by the customer, those customer name securities are returned outright to customers. Everything else, all other customer property, goes into what is called the fund of customer property, and that is shared pro rata by customers depending upon the size of their claims. So for example, let's assume that you and I are customers of the failed broker-dealer, and each of us is owed $100 in cash by the firm, but the trustee is only able to collect $50. Well, a distribution pro rata means that you will get $25 of that $50 and I will get $25 because each of us is owed only 50% of what has been recovered by the trustee. Next slide, please. So you are still owed $50 and I'm still owed $50 because the trustee was only able to collect $100 worth of customer property and we shared that property pro rata. So how do I make sure that I get back the rest of what I am owed and that you get back the rest of what you're owed? Well, that's where the SIPC advance comes in. SIPC can advance up to $500,000 to return missing customer property to customers. And of that $500,000, up to $250,000 can be for a return of cash only. So in our case, where you and I are still owed $50 each, SIPC will advance those funds so that I get the $50 of customer property as well as the $50 of SIPC advance. And now I am made whole because I have recovered all of my $100 loss and you have recovered all of the $100 that you entrusted to your broker-dealer. I can be, if I have a claim for securities, my claim for securities may be satisfied in kind. So let's assume that when the broker fails, the broker was holding 100 shares of stock for me, which are missing. And so what the trustee can do is the SIPC can advance the value of those securities to the trustee. The trustee goes into the market and buys those 100 shares for me. So it is possible if you have a claim for securities to have your claim satisfied in kind. Likewise, if you have a claim for cash, your claim will be satisfied in cash. SIPC funds can be used to satisfy missing or to replace missing customer property, but it can also be used to pay the administrative expenses of the liquidation proceeding. And these can be very expensive. So it costs money for a trustee to oversee the liquidation. He has fees, or he or she has fees. Likewise, his counsel's fees have to be paid, as well as the consultant's fees. Well, generally, those expenses should be paid out of any general estate. But if there is no general estate or insufficient general estate, then SIPC can advance the funds to pay those administrative expenses. Next slide, please. If I have a very large claim against the broker-dealer, so for example, let's assume that I'm owed $1 million in securities in cash. Well, there is this SIPC advance up to $500,000, so I know that I will not lose at least up to that amount. And then let's say that in customer property, my pro rata share would only amount to $250,000. So I'm still out $250,000. Well, I have to stand in line with general creditors because the balance of my claim will be satisfied out of any general estate. Next slide, please. So to be protected under SIPA, under the Securities Investor Protection Act, you have to be a customer. And that's a term of art. It's defined under SIPA. Basically, it is someone who is owed cash and securities entrusted to the broker-dealer. So it does not include lenders, participants in repo or repurchase agreements, people with claims for losses that are based on fraud or misrepresentation. You also have to have a claim based on securities. So if you're owed cash, the cash must have been deposited for the purpose of investing in securities, or you must be owed securities themselves. And the term security also is defined under the law, under SIPA. It, of course, will include stocks, bonds, things that you would normally, or investments that you would normally consider as a security. But it does not include, for example, foreign currency, commodity futures, or investments of that nature. Again, it has to be a security as defined, as the term is defined in the Securities Investor Protection Act. You also have to be owed cash and securities entrusted to a broker-dealer. So we have seen cases where a fraudster will use the name of a broker-dealer that sounds very much like the name of a SIPC member, but maybe just slightly different to persuade a customer to invest. And yet we will not be able to protect that investor if the firm is not a SIPC member. So for example, maybe you have a firm whose name is John Jones, Inc. And that's a legitimate, let's assume that that's a legitimate broker-dealer. But the representative says that the name of the firm is James Jones, Inc., which sounds very much like the name of the broker-dealer, the legitimate SIPC member, but it is not. In that case, we still cannot protect you. Next slide, please. So we started out, or SIPC started out at the end of December 1970, and for a number of years, it was not well known, but it has grown. It has administered a number of liquidations, and we have covered some of the most significant stockbroker failures in history, including, for example, Lehman Brothers, which of course failed in September of 2008, one of the largest bankruptcies in history. It has been a very successful liquidation. At the outset, the trustee was able to transfer a number of customer accounts to other broker-dealers. All in all, $105 billion of customer assets have been distributed to more than 110,000 customers. $1.3 billion has been incurred in administrative expenses, but those expenses have been paid by the debtor's estate. So the liquidation, which is very near to completion, has been resolved, I'm sorry, with, back up one slide, please. with no cost to customers. Oops, I think we're on 17. Slide 17, please. Great, thank you. So the Lehman Brothers liquidation is one type of failure. It, as you probably know, it arose as a result of the subprime mortgage housing crisis. The firm was over leveraged. It couldn't get the credit that it needed, and so it was placed in liquidation. But the next brokerage firm that failed, slide 18, please, just a few months later, was Bernard Madoff Investment Securities, and that was a different type of liquidation because this was a Ponzi scheme. It was an outright fraud, an outright conversion of customer assets, an outright theft of customer assets, where customer assets were used to pay other customers fake profits. And that liquidation is also ongoing, but it is also a very successful proceeding. To date, at least $14 billion has been recovered and distributed to more than 2,600 customers. And SIPC has advanced more than $2.6 billion. But because it was a Ponzi scheme, because there wasn't much customer property on hand when the trustee took over, the trustee has brought a number of lawsuits to try to recapture those stolen funds. He has that authority under SIPA. These are called clawback or avoidance suits. And those lawsuits are still very much ongoing with hopefully many more billions to recover. Next slide, please, slide 19. So there are more than $15 billion worth of actions that have been brought to try to recover converted customer property against a number of feeder funds, Madoff family members, friends of Madoff, and those lawsuits are ongoing throughout the world. And you see just some of the countries where these actions are pending. Slide 20, please. So, of course, SIPC, the SIPC program is not the only investor protection program. There is the program in Indonesia, a number of SIPC counterparts that have similar programs throughout Asia, the Middle East, Western Europe. And SIPC has entered into memoranda of understanding with a number of them. And why are these protection programs important? Well, of course, when you invest in securities, when you buy stock, you're buying a share of a company. You're helping that company to grow. You are contributing, or the investors are contributing to the strength and the growth of the nation's or the country's economy. But investors want to know that whatever amount they're investing will not be lost if their brokerage firm fails. And that is the value of the customer protection program, that even if the brokerage firm fails, the investor knows that within the limits of protection, his or her assets will not be lost. And that contributes to investor confidence. Next slide, please. Since 1970, we have had a number of liquidations. You see the number 327 there. That actually should be 330. We have had no new cases since the pandemic began in 2020. But all in all, the SIPC program has been extremely successful. Since its inception, we have advanced over $3 billion to make possible the recovery of at least $141 billion in assets owed to more than 770 investors. So I believe that I am within my 30 minutes allotted. I hope that this has made some sense. I hope it's been of some use. And I welcome the opportunity to answer any questions that you may have during the Q&A session. So thank you very much for your attention. And again, we appreciate very much the opportunity to speak with you during this conference.
Thank you very much, Ibu Josephine. We learned so much about SIPC and how the investor protection scheme works in the US within the last half an hour. I will come back to you later in the Q&A session, which brings us to the next presentation, which is, as I have mentioned earlier, about Indonesian capital market consumer protection mechanism by Pak Sarjito. But before we start the presentation, please allow me to introduce him first. Pak Sarjito SH SAMBA is currently the Deputy Commissioner for Education and Consumer Protection, Indonesia Financial Services Authority, or OJK. Previously, he was Deputy Commissioner of Capital Market Supervision, OJK. He earned his undergraduate degree in law, specializing in legal practitioner from the Faculty of Law, University of Indonesia. He also earned his undergraduate degree from Faculty of Economics, Gadjah Mada University, Yogyakarta. He holds an MBA degree in finance from St. Louis University, Missouri, USA. Bapak Sarjito is also a progressive thinker and productive speaker in the area of capital market and enforcement. He lectures capital market and enforcement for police officers, public judges, Corruption Eradication Commission, lawyers, public notary, issuers, bankers, academicians, and others. He has attended and spoken in many, many international conferences and seminars and training around the world. He has been trained in several jurisdictions, including serious training in case management and management of serious crimes in Australian Federal Police, Canberra, and Australian Securities and Investment Commission, or ASIC, and others. Without further ado, I would like to invite Pak Sarjito to deliver his presentation. Silakan, Pak.
Okay, thank you.
The time is yours for the next 30 minutes.
Thank you, Riza. This is probably the first time I have to speak English for quite some time. I've never traveled overseas, after the pandemic, after the coronavirus, and sometimes it's a bit tough. It's different from Josephine Wang, as a US citizen, it's easy to speak English. Anyway, do I have to speak English, or can I manage mix English and Indonesia? Because I'm afraid that audience, mostly Indonesian, they got confused. It is not easy even for the audience to follow what is Josephine Wang from SIPC to understand, because it's a bit complicated. Anyway, I'm trying to speak in English because some of the audience, of course, come from the overseas, and thank you for the opportunity. And again, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning, distinguished guests and speakers. And I would like to speak a bit brief in this case, because I know that you will allow me only 30 minutes, while I have to speak, big things actually with respect to the consumer protection, because my job is not only as a Deputy Commissioner for Consumer Protection and Education for the capital market, but all industry within the Indonesia FSA. I would like to skip some of my slide because it was provided by my staff and I haven't read all, of course. And please, page 4. Okay, first, I would like to tell everybody else here that consumers, according to the law number 20, year 2011, concerning Indonesian FSA consumer mean parties who put their funds or utilize the services available at the financial service institution, including, among others, banking customers and capital market investors. So now we are talking about the protection of the capital market investors. So before I forget, as Josephine Wong, I need to have a disclaimer. So this time, this is merely my personal view and not necessarily the view of the Indonesian FSA. This is important because like US SEC and other speakers from overseas normally they have a disclaimer. And then page 5. Okay. According to the Article 4 of the Indonesian FSA law, OJK has the obligation, has the objective. One of the objectives is on the alphabet C, which is capable of protecting consumers and public interest or society. So public interest normally called in Indonesia as a society. So we protect consumers and the society. Page next. And then luckily in OJK law, it's mentioned clearly that we have 7 commissioners selected by, proposed by the president and selected by the parliament. And then eventually we have a special commissioner in charge of the consumer protection, which is on the G, alphabet G, a member in charge of education and protection of consumers. So we are within the OJK, within the Indonesia FSA, so it is clear enough that we have commissioner specialized in consumer protection and also the education. Next. This is very important way that I have to explain the basic things because it's very important mainly for the Indonesian. So that one of the obligation of the power of the OJK is that we have for the consumers and public protection, OJK is authorized to take necessary action to prevent consumers and public from losses, including A, providing information and education in the characteristic of financial services sector, services, product, and public. What is meant by this article is that, so OJK has the obligation to educate consumers to be more advanced consumers. For example, the consumers of a bank, they know firstly only time deposit and then change to a mutual fund. And we have to educate them also in more complicated financial instrument. And we also have to educate the society who hasn't been able to be consumers in any of the financial service sector. And the obligation also is that we can order the financial service institution to stop their activity if such activity are potential, not only that they give the consumer loss, but also the potential cause of loss to public. And we can say, for example, if there is an advertisement, the advertisement is exaggeration, is not real, and then we can say, hey, you guys stop, you cannot do that. And we can also do any other action according to the law. Next. Okay, we also have the obligation that OJK provide complaint services of consumers, including preparing an adequate system and infrastructure for complaint services of consumers who suffer from losses committed by the perpetrator at the financial service institution, and making complaint mechanism of consumers who suffer from losses committed by perpetrators at the financial service institution, and also the facilitating complaint settlement of consumers who suffer from losses committed by the perpetrators at the financial services institution. And by doing this, OJK, so for those of you from the financial industry, especially in the capital market, if then my staff, they come go and request some of the, your record, and also they may do the investigation, because according to this law, we also can have a specific power to investigate of the consumer complaint. Next. This is very important thing on the Article 13. Actually, the Article 13 was dreamed when I was in the capital market. So because at that time, I was very long time working as a formal and criminal investigator in the capital market. And we felt that at the time, the power of administrative power and criminal power are not enough for us to execute the institution power. So we want to have the civil power or the civil proceeding. And in this article, the civil proceeding was given to the FSA law because the capital market law amendment was not, being discussed until currently. So in this writing on the Article 30 is very clear that for the consumers and public protection, OJK is authorized to perform legal defense, including A, ordering or performing certain action against financial services institution to resolve any complaint of consumers who suffer from losses committed by the financial service institution. And also we can have we have capacity to file a lawsuit on behalf of the consumers. So if we have, the fund from our lawsuit, the lawsuit will be back all to the consumers, not to the Indonesia FSA. Next. And then this article only shows that for you guys, for the Indonesian, audience, that if we haven't regulated some of the regulation, and we can put the consumer protection education regulation by this article, which is new rules may be issued by the OJK for education and consumer protection. Next. Page 12. Okay. This is the principle of the consumer protection on the financial service sector. Actually, that we want that all parties in the capital market and also within the OJK supervision, including bank and non-bank financial institution, they must have a transparency, which is clear and complete information to consumers about products and all services in easily and understood language. This is very important because most of the time, the writing, very small thing, and the discussion is only through the phone, and the consumers, most of them do not really understand what is meant by this explanation. And that's why I warn you from the financial industry, mainly today in the capital market, must explain to the potential consumers with the easiest language, the easiest word, the easiest explanation that they understand easily. And then the second one would be the impartial treatment. Impartial treatment and non-discriminative treatment of consumers. So whether because of the ethnicity, region, or race. And reliability. Reliability is very important because the accurate services with the use of reliable system, procedure, infrastructure, and human resources. Secrecy and security of the consumer data and information. This is very important, mainly today in the era of the digital and lots of complaint to the in the Indonesian FSA, thousands of complaint. Currently, with the new system, we receive 1,000 of complaint in a day, and we have to respond all of them, which is some of them will be about the secrecy and security of the consumer data. With digitalization, now everybody can have an access, and some of the leaking thing, which is has been discussed internationally and locally, and then we want that financial institution really protect and invest in such security of the consumer data. And complaint handling and dispute resolution. Most of the time, people are easy to get product, and when the consumers and the society offer product, it looks beautiful, promising with a high yield and everything. But then when they get complaint, and when they become consumers and they try to reach the financial service industry or even the issuers, it is not easy for them to to talk, even to talk. And sometimes the telephone not accepted and things like that, that they're complained to us. So that's why actually your current consumers would be your life. So any financial service industry must take care of the consumers, and if they get complaint, please handle with care and handle in such a way that the consumers are happy, not only when you offer the product, but when they have a question on such and such. And also if there is a dispute, Indonesia FSA, basically we don't want to take care of the complaint to the Indonesian FSA, but we want the internal dispute resolution. If there is a complaint because of misunderstanding between the consumers and also the financial service provider, and they have to resolve themselves first. If not, then they may go to the institution with the external dispute resolution. But if the complaint of the consumers, there is even a little, there is a alleged violation of the capital market law or any other laws within the OJK supervision, so we're going to take care of that, and not under the dispute resolution like the external dispute resolution, meaning that if you have a complaint and your complaint is clear enough, showing us that there is a violation of the, for example, the securities companies, and then we're gonna go much deeper to investigate the complaint and also the securities company in itself. Next. This is actually, I did this sometime later, sometime tonight, because as an ex-investigator, both the formal and criminal investigator, I had some note. The problem of that, of this Indonesian, why then most of them complain to the OJK because of their financial literacy. Would you, Sita, please next slide first, and then come back after this. Okay, let's take a look on this. This is the literacy and inclusion index in the capital market. Take a look on the, we did the two surveys, first in 2016, and the latest would be in 2019. And in the capital market area, we understand, it's still very small. In 2000, this is the what you call the survey, include 12,000 people in Indonesia with different background, and in 2019, in the capital market literacy is still small, only 4.92, and the inclusion even smaller. And you could see it's only 1.55%, which is imagine with such a literacy and inclusion in the capital market. So it is not easy that the consumers understand all concept of the product and also services from the financial service provider in the capital market. Back to the previous slide. No, previous slide. Okay, the problem is this not happen only in Indonesia, I believe, because there is also research. Later on, I will tell you that the problem with that, when they have they become investor in capital market, do investor read the financial report? This is the first question. The second question would be, do investor understand the report? And this is more important. Is the published report is correct? Right? This is a very important. Why then some of us, not only here, but also overseas, they tend to buy, but they don't understand. And also the second one would be account maintenance. Some securities company in the past, hopefully not today, misuse of client account. It is a violation, a big violation, and even crime. And also stealing client account, stealing client asset. Why then I said this? Because before, as I mentioned earlier, I was a former and criminal investigator, lots of cases on the misuse of client account and also stealing a client asset in the account. And also sometimes because of the trust to the registered representative or to the broker-dealer, and then I give the power of attorney to do everything. But actually the broker-dealer, actually they don't have the power to manage the account, the client accounts, because they are not investment managers. But the problem is that sometimes, there is a power of attorney to the registered representative to do this and that, which is and also the third thing would be trading attitude. Sometimes, Indonesian investor doesn't understand, what is actually the mechanism of the trading, or do the investor trade rely on the broker dealer advice? Sometimes a broker dealer advise for the client, sir, would you buy this one? This is a good stuff. Even this is a fried stuff, and then give you a good potential yield and things like that. And then lately, we understand the influencer. We understand the power of influencer, not only here, also overseas. Even when, such a prominent person like Cristiano Ronaldo, they throw away Coke, and then the the Coke income in the market diminish or plummeted very deeply. And in Indonesia also the same thing. Sometimes the influencer actually do not really understand how the capital market works, even the individual shares. But then because they admire the influencer and then they follow the influencer. Rapidly, it become a discussion, and I personally, watch quite, intense on the influencer thing, and the way how they speak on the certain stock is really misleading actually. And the other thing is shadow banking. Why then I say shadow banking? Some securities company offer the client T+0. Actually, they must wait the fund until T+2, but with T+0, this securities company get a margin or money from this one. And I'm gonna go a bit quick on this, and also the margin trading. Most of the margin trading sometimes are doing good, but some of them still there is indisciplined execution as required by rules. So I would like to advise to you all, mainly for the consumers and the society, always follow the rules. Always follow the rules. If you do not follow the rules, if you have problem, then you will not be helped. Like Josephine Wong also explained, if there is a securities company, discussing with the client with the promise thing, it's not going to be funded by the SIPC. And also the consumers and the society must also understand the knowledge. This is a basic knowledge, which is between technical and fundamental analysis. Sometimes even you are PhD in finance, and if you don't understand the market, you will not beat the market. It is not easy to beat the market. You must understand the fundamental, and also you have to understand technical. So sometimes also the broker analysis. Broker analysis is also good, but sometimes you cannot rely fully 100% on the broker analysis. So you have to understand yourself. And I mentioned before, you have to understand how to read the financial report. You have to understand how to how to trade your stock, and you have to understand the technical and fundamental analysis and everything. And the eighth thing I'm concerned is also the portion of public shares. Why the portion of public shares? Here in Indonesia, very few companies that have the distribution of share of the public share more than 50%. As a lawyer, I understand how you as an investor don't like Risa, for example, as the director of one of the corporation. Then I, as a controlling shareholders, still control with the 50% plus one. So I'm still powerful. Everybody hate you, hate Lisa, but I still love Lisa. Then I still appoint Lisa for quite some time, and even I still keep her again and again. So the portion of public share is also become a problem. So actually, when you are minority shareholders, your right and obligation is guaranteed by rules, by law, but this is easy to talk, but not easy in reality. And the 9-1 is the fixed allotment. In issuing stock, in Indonesia, there is rule for the Indonesia FSA, there is a fixed allotment. This is good actually, because of the issuing securities in Indonesia. We need to have potential consumers, and this is the job of underwriter is very tough. The job of underwriter is very tough because full commitment, which is they have to be able to sell the stock and for whatever reason. So, and then with that, selling the stock in the primary market is on the discretion of the underwriter. And with the fixed allotment, they manage to their friends or buddies who normally in good and heavy time they help them. So this is rational. It is okay. But then this thing not giving an incentive to the first consumers in the capital market. So we have to think about this in order to give incentive in the primary market to the new consumers. And then corporate action. Some corporate action are good. Some corporate action is really make the even minorities investor become even worse. With the not only because of diluted shares and also the independent shareholder approval, which is some of them are dummy, not the real independent shareholders. So for those of you from the US and also from other jurisdictions, from UK and Canada, here in Indonesia, we have the term of the independent shareholders, not only majority and minority shareholders, because we here actually we want that only independent shareholders would not relate to the controlling shareholders and others or directors and commissioners of the corporation, which is they have giving independent approval on a certain transaction, which is probably in conflict of interest. And this is a disclosure is necessary, but not sufficient. Why then I give this notification? There is a study conducted by regulator in I think it's ASIC and also from the Dutch, which is actually disclosure is not necessary. It's necessary but not sufficient. Next. And this is even more serious crime, serious violation and crime, and it become a discussion many times even when I was in capital market, which is fraud, which is defrauding or deceiving when buying or selling securities, and also this is the market manipulation, the way people see. So it is not easy to manage the market. Market manipulation seem to be not available, but seem to be every day over there. And I think my colleague from the stock exchange understand this, and sometimes for those who are professional manipulator, they try to do in such a way. It is not easy to manipulate. It is putting the share up, and then putting down, but not following the traditional way, because sometimes the market manipulation motive is only for managing the margin account, and also to manage the asset management, and some other motive which is not like pump and dump like most of the traditional market manipulation. Insider trading. Insider trading is one of the classic one. It is not easy to prove, even in the US. I understand the US SEC has no power to have a criminal proceeding. So FBI has such a power. And I remember there is a case which is very famous, which is Rajaratnam case. At that time, it's only been able to be executed because FBI tapped the conversation of the Rajaratnam. So I also believe that the investigator in the capital market crime must have such a power. Otherwise, it is very easy to prove because they know how to communicate without easy to to be booked. And also the falsified book and record. This is one of the things which is very important to understand, that sometimes, as I mentioned earlier in my previous slide, that because we don't understand most of the consumers or investors do not understand how to read the book, and even to read the false book or false record, which is it has been done softly and roughly by some of the corporation in Indonesia. Next. Oh, next. I don't want to talk about the SIPF because I know Mr. Narottama would like to speak this clearly, and also I would not also respond the question with the SPF because there is an expert on the SIPF, which is Mr. Narottama. Okay, this is I mentioned earlier that OJK conduct the optimization of the internet dispute resolution. This is a web-based application managed by the OJK to carry out consumer services in the financial sector. We established the consumer protection portal application. By this, the number of consumer complaints to the OJK, increased dramatically. Next. We have also the alternative dispute resolution, as I mentioned earlier, that there were 6 alternative dispute resolution, and now we merge to make it efficient because now we can do online also, which is because of the efficiency principle and also effectiveness. We want this new alternative dispute resolution would be more credible and helping the dispute between consumers and the financial service provider. And I told you before, if there is an alleged violation, small or big violation, and the consumer can show us and we have data, we will not bring this into the alternative dispute resolution, because I believe this is not only about conflict or dispute, but also there is a violation. Next. I'm not going to talk about this. I'm afraid, I'm losing my time. It's 30 minutes by Ms. Risa, which is, I don't want to be reminded, because it's painful to be reminded. Next. Next. Okay, this is a number of complaints. You can read this because nothing important to explain to you. Next. This is a top 5 complaint in the capital market, which is dispute between parties and fraud and misuse of consumer asset, and also selling agent misconduct. As I told you before, many complain for those who have an investor in asset management. They are promised to have fixed yield, fixed income, but eventually when they are in problem, and then the fixed income eventually not being paid. As I mentioned earlier, that always follow the rule. For those of you, both consumers and securities companies and everybody in the capital market, including the issuers, both prudential and ordinary issuers, please follow the rule. If you follow the rule, you will sleep peacefully and wake up, in a healthy life. Next. Okay, I think I don't want to read this because I mentioned earlier in some of my presentation. Thank you, Risa, and your time I give you back. Okay, here you go. If those of you had a complaint on the capital market things, please call 157 directly. You can try it now. And you can also WhatsApp. Remember, when I mention WhatsApp, do not call. Because some of the people said that I try to call on 0811-571-5757 and nobody, pick up the call. Yes, this is only for WhatsApp because millennial like to do WhatsApp, not visiting us, not calling us. You like to hide and you complain through WhatsApp. And we have also social media, Instagram and Facebook, and also email the consumer at the ojk.go.id. Okay, thank you. And I apologize if there is a, inconvenient and something, not proper in my presentation. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Terima kasih banyak. Thank you very much, Pak Sarjito, for the very informative and comprehensive presentation. I can understand now why you get invited to do lectures, very often. It's like a mini lectures in Indonesian consumer protection from one of the leading speaker from OJK. Thanks again. I will get back to you in the Q&A session. We do have a few questions already from the participants. The next presentation is from Pak Narotama Arianto, the President Director of the Indonesian Securities Investor Protection Fund, or Indonesia SIPF. Let me introduce you to him first before he starts his presentation. Currently, Pak Narotama is the President Director of Indonesia Securities Investor Protection Fund. He holds a master degree of accounting from the University of Indonesia and obtained a profession degree, PP accounting, from the Economy Faculty of University of Indonesia, and earned a bachelor degree in economics from University of Indonesia. Pak Narotama has several certifications from, one of them is Qualified Internal Auditor, and another one is the Certified Lead Auditor, ISO 9001 and ISO 27001. And he's also a Certified Risk Management Professional. And on top of that, he also is a Certified Human Resources Professional. Before he joined Indonesia SIPF, Pak Narotama was a senior international audit manager with IDX. So he used to work for us. I know him really well. And before that, he was an internal auditor supervisor with BCA. And before that, he was a senior auditor at KAP RSM AJ Associates. I would like to invite Pak Narotama to do his presentation. The next 30 minutes is yours, Pak.
Okay. Thank you, Bu Ica. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, Ms. Wang and team, and good morning, Pak Sarjito and team. Allow me to continue sharing about Indonesia Protection 2 Investor Protection Fund, or we call DPP, or Dana Perlindungan Pemodal Mechanism in Indonesia. Before we start, please watch our short video about investor protection.
Atau beli HP baru nih.
Hai.
Kamu siapa?
Aku si Kopi. Jadi penghasilanmu cuma dihabiskan untuk jalan-jalan dan membeli HP baru itu?
Iya, emangnya kenapa?
Kalau kamu terus membiasakan hidup konsumtif, bagaimana dengan masa depanmu?
Aku juga menabung di bank kok.
Tapi kalau cuma nabung, nanti uang tabunganmu akan kalah dengan inflasi. Coba deh untuk mulai berinvestasi di pasar modal.
Emang aman? Takut ah.
Ikut si Povi jalan-jalan yuk. Sejak tahun 2014, aset yang kamu investasikan di pasar modal itu telah dijamin oleh Lembaga Perlindungan Investor yang bernama Indonesia SIPF.
Halo, saya Bung Aman. Indonesia SIPF bertugas untuk mengganti aset investor yang hilang dalam penyimpanan oleh perantara pedagang efek atau dikenal dengan nama sekuritas, serta bank kustodian yang menjadi anggota Dana Perlindungan Pemodal atau DPP.
Kok bisa aset investor hilang? Kan zaman sudah canggih.
Namanya resiko, segimana kecilnya pun tetap ada risiko penyalahgunaan dari oknum yang tidak bertanggung jawab.
Oh, iya juga sih. Terus, dari mana dana apa tadi tuh yang dipakai buat mengganti aset investor yang hilang itu? Apa saya harus membayar biaya berlangganan di Indonesia SIPF atau gimana?
Hai, tenang aja. Kamu tidak perlu membayar biaya apapun kok ke Indonesia SIPF. Dana untuk penggantian tersebut dikumpulkan Indonesia SIPF dalam bentuk DPP atau Dana Perlindungan Pemodal. Dana tersebut kita dapat dari kontribusi BEI, KPEI, KSEI, serta iuran awal dan tahunan anggota DPP.
Dana inilah yang nantinya akan dipakai untuk mengganti aset investor yang hilang.
Jika asetmu menunjukkan jumlah yang tidak sama dengan yang seharusnya, kamu dapat konfirmasi dan mencoba menyelesaikannya terlebih dahulu dengan kustodian kamu. Jika tidak mendapatkan penyelesaian, kamu dapat melaporkan kepada OJK dengan menggunakan salah satu portal komunikasi berikut. Setelah itu, OJK akan melakukan verifikasi dan investigasi serta mengeluarkan pernyataan tertulis. Jika verifikasi disetujui, maka Indonesia SIPF akan melakukan penggantian atas aset yang hilang tersebut. Tapi ingat, kamu juga harus mawas diri agar aset kamu aman dan pasti terlindungi.
Gimana tuh?
Pertama, pastikan nama, NIK, nomor handphone, dan emailmu sesuai dengan yang kamu gunakan saat mendaftar ulang pada akses KSEI. Caranya gampang, klik aja akses.ksei.co.id. Dan pastikan juga untuk sekuritas kamu itu terdaftar menjadi anggota DPP. Cek deh di website Indonesia SIPF. Nah, setiap kamu melakukan transaksi, pastikan kamu memiliki bukti permintaan transaksi atau bukti transaksinya. Jangan sampai hilang ya. Iya, dan juga setiap bulannya kamu harus rajin cek laporan portfolio yang dikirim oleh sekuritas kamu.
Kemudian setelah itu, cocokkan laporan portofolio tersebut dengan data yang ada di akses KSEI kamu secara berkala.
Oh, ternyata gitu. Kalau aku lupa informasinya gimana nih?
Kan ada Indonesia SIPF. Kamu bisa hubungi layanan konsultasi dan pengaduan pemodal Indonesia SIPF di jam kerja melalui portal-portal ini. Siapa tahu bisa ketemu lagi dengan Bung Aman dan Anya.
Siap, jadi ngerasa aman deh untuk berinvestasi di pasar modal. Jadi nggak sabar untuk mulai berinvestasi.
Nah gitu dong, daripada uangmu habis karena terlalu konsumtif, mending untuk investasi masa depan.
Gak perlu takut berinvestasi lagi, karena aset investasimu terjamin oleh Indonesia SIPF.
Untuk informasi lebih lanjut, silakan hubungi layanan pengaduan dan konsultasi pemodal Indonesia SIPF.
Okay, let me start by giving you some background about protection scheme in Indonesia capital market. As we know in this slide, OJK or Indonesia Financial Services Authority perform its regulatory and supervisory duties over financial services activities in banking, capital market, and non-bank financial industry sectors. In banking sector, we have Indonesia Deposit Insurance Corporation, or we call LPS, as we know. LPS is established as an independent institution that functions to ensure depositors fund and actively participate in maintaining stability in the banking system. And how about capital market? in substance, we have some existing protection as those in banking sectors. There are two main types of capital markets investor protection. First one is in the settlement transaction process. As we know, KPEI is Indonesia Capital Market Industry serve as clearing and guarantee institution who perform exchange, transaction clearing, and settlement guarantee function. And second one, in the asset depository area, this is our area. The asset that you invested in capital market and recorded by KSAI is under Indonesia SIPF protection. This is our main function to make protection in capital market. Next, please. Okay. This picture shows a protection significance. Let's imagine if suddenly Pak Sajito, Bu Ica, we receive an email regarding our car due to airbag problem, what should we do? I think most of participants here, as soon as possible, will follow up that email and come up to nearest authorized repair shop to replace it. So, what is the importance of protection? We must have airbags are expected to protect us from worst case scenario, and we want the airbag to function perfectly. But never use it. We never want to use the airbag. No. Because what? Because if they're being used, our lives are already at stake. Quite often, we compare the significance of protection existent with the needs of having airbags in our cars. Next, please. Okay. Related to this slide, we talk about the risk. Even though we already have investor protection mechanism in IDX, as Pak Inano explained before, such as special notations, unusual market activity, and other mechanism, we still have the risk. We still have the risk of losing assets. Look at the picture. Custodian has the authority to administer of investor asset includes record, save, transfer, utilize, and report transaction. There is a potential risk. The unauthorized transfer by investor asset, this is our coverage. This is our risk coverage. The risk of unauthorized transfer by custodians. But there are some risks we don't cover. Consists of one, instrument value or price, instrument liquidity, delisted stock, physical instrument or script, and settlement failure including repo. And for your information, our protection mechanism is only for scriptless instrument. And how about our parents, our seniors who has been an investor for a long time ago and have script instrument like my father, his script instrument. It's better to contact our colleagues in Securities Administration Bureau or BAE, or we call Bureau Administrasi Efek, and change it to scriptless instrument. After that, it will be able to get our protection, and we can the protection will be processed. Okay, next slide. Okay, this slide describe about our company. PT Penyelenggara Program Pelindungan Investor Efek Indonesia. Quite long, huh? It's called P3IEI, or known as Indonesia Securities Investor Protection Fund, Indonesia SIPF. Indonesia SIPF only handles claim for investors who lost their assets based on approval from OJK. For your information, we operate based on regulation from OJK. There are two regulations, OJK number 49 and number 50. We're still very young. We operate officially as Indonesia SIPF since September 2013, or around 8 years ago. We have core value consists of integrity, professionalism, teamwork, and customer focus. And we call it I Protect. I protect equal with our main function in Indonesia capital market to protect our investor. Okay, next slide. Related to this slide, OJK or Indonesia Financial Service Authority is the highest institution in the capital market. And then there are SRO or self-regulatory organization consists of IDX, KPEI, and KSEI. They are our shareholder with equal percentage of ownership. This is our position. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Well, turning our attention now to the fund and the company. We call a fund or investor protection fund, we call DPP, Dana Perlindungan Pemodal, or the company we call PDPP, Penyelenggara Dana Perlindungan Pemodal. DPP is a pool of collected fund to protect the investor from loss of asset. And how about the PDPP or Investor Protection Corporation? Is a corporation established by the license from OJK to administer and manage investor protection fund. In this case, in Indonesia, it's mandate to Indonesia SIPF. DPP and PDPP are two separate entities. We make different monitoring report, we make separate financial report, and each financial report regularly audited by a public accounting firm. So, next. Let's move on to our funding source. In performing its mandates and duties, Indonesia SPF collects funds from the following source. Number one, it's initial fund contribution from IDX, SAE, and KPEI. The second one is membership fee. The value of which shall be determined by OJK consists of membership fee and annual membership fee. Next, fund which is collected by DPP from the custodian as a compensation from the investor for conducting subscription rights, the investment yield of DPP, and other resources determined by OJK. At the end of May 2021, our DPP or Investor Protection Fund around 231 billion rupiah or equal to 16.2 million US dollar. On the other hand, in the right slide, we have Investor Compensation Reserve Fund or we call CGLP, Cadangan Ganti Rugi Pemodal. What is that? CGLP is fund to be allocated as IPF in case of emergency. We can activate when insufficient IPF or DPP to cover the investor loss happen. And now our CGLP, alhamdulillah, is 150 billion rupiah or equal to 10.5 million US dollar. For your info, we conduct periodically coverage analysis of our investor protection fund. As of May 2021, we can cover 7 members who has highest risk based on our risk assessment. Next, please. Okay, this is our membership. There are 130 members from broker dealers and 20 members from custodian bank. Or you can see full list of our members in our company website at www.indonesiaspf.co.id. Okay. Okay. This slide describes about criteria of protected investor. Indonesia SPF protects the investor if it's really easy. On single investor identification or SID provided by KSE. Indonesia SPF doesn't protect investor who meets the following criteria. 1. Investor who involved in or becomes the causes of the loss of investor asset. 2. Investor is a majority shareholder, director, commissioner, or officially under custodian director, and investor has affiliation with the parties in point 1 and 2. Okay. Okay, related to this slide, our maximum compensation. Our maximum protection fund has decreased several times as the slide show. For now, Alhamdulillah, at the beginning of this year, our maximum compensation for loss of asset is 200 million rupiahs or equal to 14,000 USD per investor and 100 billion rupiahs per custodian or equal to 7.02 million USD per custodian. Alhamdulillah, it's been increased in early this beginning of years. Okay, next slide. Okay. As Pak Sarjito said, I will explain this flow, but maybe I will explain with only the substance. This flow shows a breakdown of claim handling. Maybe I will tell this is a industry's procedure, not our procedure. This is OJK, investor, and our stakeholder will do this procedure. First of all, investor asset loss even happen. The complaint is addressed to OJK and processed by OJK. Indonesia SIPF only handles claim from investor who lost their asset after OJK declares through written statement. I repeat, written statement with the following condition. Number one, there is a loss of investor asset. Two, custodian unable to cover for investor asset loss. And next, the custodian unable to operate any longer and business license is considered to be revoked. After that, by no later than business days following the decision from OJK or following the written statement, Indonesia ISPF will announce and invite investor to newspaper or maybe now other media or social media to submit a claim and then give suggestion to form a claim committee to OJK and form a claim verification team. For your information, since we started operation in 2013, there has never been a case. It's never been a case, a loss of asset that requires a claim from our protection fund. And we hope there are no cases in the future. But in last November 2020, we perform a claim simulation. Maybe I will give some time to maybe scan this QR to get our giveaway. There is five giveaway from Indonesia SPF to audience from Indonesia only. Okay, thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih banyak Pak Ao atas presentasinya. That brings us to since we have completed all the presentation, we have come to the Q&A session of the program. I would like to thank all our guest speakers for the great presentations, and I will select a few questions for each of you, and I will start with Ibu Josephine Wang. Okay, let's see. Okay, the first question is, do you have any plan for future development of SIPP protection scope or scheme with the technological advancement that is happening? And is there any part of the investor protection that needs attention and further develop? That was the first question. I'm sorry. Okay. And then there's the second question is 99% of person eligible to get their investment back from SIPA proceedings. What happened to the 1%? that was the question. Okay. The next one is it possible for SIPC to provide advanced liquidity to companies that have been delisted? That one is from Rio Pratama from an asset management company. And the last one is how will SIPC provide protection to investors in the recent Robinhood case? That was from a friend of mine, Pak Arisandi from Murray Asset Management, Securitas. Ibu Josephine, if you would like to answer those questions, you can take your time.
I'm not sure I remember what all of them are.
I can repeat it to you if you like. Okay, the first one is about the development. The first question is, do you have any plan for future development of SIPC protection scope or scheme? And is there any part of the investor protection that needs attention and therefore needs to be developed?
Yeah. So we are governed by a federal law. And so if there's going to be any change to our protection, that will have to be a decision made by Congress. We do not protect, for example, cryptocurrency or any digital asset. And as you probably know, that these are questions that are being looked at by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So unless and until something, the definition, for example, of security is broadened, the protection would not be available. I will say that over the last year or so, we have been taking steps to modernize in-house at SIPC. So for example, we're creating a portal so that our members can file assessment forms and make payments electronically, which they have not really been able to do in an easy way up to now. So we're modernizing in-house, but at least in terms of broadening the protection, that would have to be something that Congress would take on. Shall we move on to the second question? Oh, I'm afraid you're frozen. Am I frozen?
No, you're okay.
Okay. What was the second question?
The second question is 99% of those eligible to get their investment back from SIPA proceeding. What happened to the 1%? Because only 99% of the claims get their investment back. What happened to the 1%?
Right, so that was looking back over SIPC's history, and my guess, or I would speculate that perhaps some customers had claims that were over the limits of protection. So as I mentioned during my presentation, each customer is protected up to $500,000, and then whatever share of customer property the trustee is able to recover for the customer. So it is possible to have an over the limit claim, and as to that extra amount that cannot be covered, that would be someone who would be ineligible for SIPC protection. And this is, I don't know specifically offhand what that 1% would be, but certainly that would be my guess, that it could just be someone whose claim was over the limits of what would be available in terms of protection under the SIPC statute. I think I've lost our moderator, but perhaps someone can tell me what the third question was.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
The third question is, okay, hang on a second. Okay, hang on. Okay, the third question is it possible for SIPC to provide advanced liquidity to companies that have been delisted?
No. Again, I have to come back to our protection is limited to whatever the law says it is. And so it would have to be defined as I mentioned, there are two criteria that a customer has to satisfy in order to be eligible for protection. One is that he or she has to be a customer as defined under SIPA, which means that the customer has to be owed assets that were entrusted to the broker-dealer when the broker-dealer fails. And the other thing is that whatever the customer is owed has to be in connection with a security transaction. If it's not a security as defined under the SIPA, there's not going to be any protection.
Okay, okay. And the fourth question, or the last one, is how would SIPC provide protection to investors in the recent Robinhood case?
Well, I'm not aware that there is at this point any need for specific protection, but I will say that if there were, the criteria under SIPA would have to be satisfied. So of course, Robinhood is a SIPC member, and should it fail financially, then of course SIPC would be available to take care of the customers. But to date, of course, Robinhood has not been placed in liquidation. And for any firm to be placed in liquidation, we would have to receive information from the SEC or FINRA that the firm is in financial trouble and that it can't meet its obligations to customers. And Robinhood, as I said today, is not placed in liquidation, and fingers crossed it will not be. But certainly, if it were to become financially troubled and customers would need SIPC protection, we would be there to protect them. Okay.
Okay, there is one more question for you, and I'm not sure if this is related to SIPC, but let me ask it anyway. How big is the impact of SIPC on the economic development of the US?
Well, I think we've certainly done our part. The whole purpose of SIPC is to encourage or ensure investor confidence. And by protecting customers and knowing that SIPC is there to protect them, that gives the customers the confidence to invest. And that's certainly what is most important in terms of strengthening the economy.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ibu Josephine, for answering the questions. We will see if there will be more, but I will switch to Pak Sarjito next. I will translate the question, ya Pak, ya, because it's in Bahasa, so that our audience from overseas can also learn from your answers. The question is, I would like to ask that with the literacy and inclusion still very low in the stock market, even though there is a program like Yuk Nabung Saham, Sekolah Pasar Modal, and influencers saham, how will you improve the literacy and inclusion among Indonesian, and with the increase of the number of in local investors recently, and due since the pandemic, you know, how do you plan to improve the literacy and inclusion in the stock market? And do you want to know the next question, or do you want to answer that first?
We should deliver all the questions, and I will answer all.
Okay. How do OJK provide legal protection to retail investors on pump and dump scheme stock, for example, PT Film by market maker? That question is from Safira Fitri. The first one was from Pak Anthony, and then the next one is about the Bernard Madoff case. Learning from the US experience with the Madoff case, which is the biggest fraud case in history, how much do you think is the chance of such case to happen in our market? And is there any part of the regulation or infrastructure or monitoring or any cross coordination with other institutions that needs to be developed? So those three questions first. Silakan, Pak.
Okay, thanks. I have so far 3 questions, which is a very good question. The first question on the why then capital market, both literacy and inclusion is so low here in Indonesia, and how can Indonesia FSA manage to boost the both literacy and inclusion, which is not easy, I can say. We have here, let me tell you that the OJK, we have a unit on the literacy and inclusion. We have all the book, both the printed book and e-book from the early life education, which is in Indonesia is PAUD, and also primary school, junior high school, and high school, and also university curricula. All the curriculum in the financial market. You know why? Because, you know, at the end, the most important thing in life is money, finance. But sometimes we never know when to start. Even I think, let me ask Risa, when you were in Gajah Mada University, did you really understand what you learned? I think it's not really understand. You are ordered to count the yield to maturity on the bond and the stock and everything. Probably our professor also did not understand at the time because they never practice. You know, that's why we really urge for those in universities, they must have an endowment to practice. Like when I was in the US, you know, my school had an endowment that we can practice, you know, buying and selling stock in the market. In terms of curriculum, we have also the e-book, as I mentioned earlier. And we also have, in the era of coronavirus, it is not easy. Like today, I record here now, we still have more than 500 audience. The question, are they really listening? Or they just put the number? You know, but in any way, in the coronavirus era here, OJK aggressive enough to give education to the consumers and to the society via digital, you know, and it is a very lucky that now by the coronavirus, we have to say thank God also that we can, you know, speak to much larger audience, which is, I always mention to my staff that you need to have a very effective education. Not only that you're proud of that, you said that, you know, sir, the audience is more than 2,000 and things like that, but we have to try to find way how to effectively to educate them. And the next question is that, you know, there's always a question, is it possible that in a country that literacy is always above the inclusion? Because back here in Indonesia, most of the inclusion here is 76%, which is the inclusion, which is the literacy is only 38%, which is people tend to get into the market without knowing the product and also the services. But I think it happened in most big countries all over the globe. And then the second question is that, how about the pump and dump? How the OJK take care of the pump and dump? Pump and dump is that the traditional type of market manipulation, which is they push the price up, and after that they dump, the price, which is this is very clear and obvious type of market manipulation, and it's very seldom happen now. And now is that very, as I can say, subtle market manipulation or soft market manipulation that for certain purposes I mentioned earlier, it could be to maintain the margin call and also to maintain the asset management, like in the case of, like Jiwasraya and things like that. And this is but it is not easy to detect. And, the current law saying that for those who violate the market manipulation, they can be charged or they can be jailed 10 years in prison, and also 10 billion rupee. And, to prove it, again, needs lots of effort and need to have full understanding on the law, and also a big effort in all in all parties. How about the Madoff thing? It could happen Madoff here. Like I believe, like Josephine Wong understood at the time. I remember I was still in the capital market. In a day, there was 1 million complaint when the Madoff era. And Madoff actually, this is a good example in the US SEC, because Madoff also had a license at the time. I think he passed away, I believe. Had the license as a registered representative, and the SEC revoked the license. Okay, revoked the license because Madoff committed a violation in terms of the capital market rules and law with the US SEC. And after that, Madoff also put in the jail by the FBI. Of course, FBI did a criminal investigation with the help of the US SEC and bring to the court. And then eventually Madoff fined, sentenced quite some time at the time, until I think he passed away in the jail. And the third thing, which is also happened here, we had this power now, which is civil power. So Madoff also, US SEC bring this lawsuit to the court with a civil proceeding, which is, so the US SEC execute 3 powers, not only the power of the US SEC, but 3 powers, which is now within OJK, which is what we call the parallel proceeding. We execute the civil power, administrative power, criminal power, and the civil power. And is it possible that Madoff case happened in Indonesia? Yes, could be possible. How could be the interaction with others, and how could be supervised? I think happen not only in the US, also in the European countries. Something unimaginable could happen. That this is my personal view, that you manage, we supervise a financial industry like that. We have a cobra, the king cobra. Sometimes you may be bitten by king cobra snake without knowing that. You feel like that, you think that the cobra snake is tame enough for you, and you take care and you play with them, but actually the king cobra may bite you, which is supervision in the capital market and other financial industry must be coordination. That's why there is a proposal also, what we call by the OJK checking, which is slick, could also be enhanced not only for the crime or a data in the banking system, but also could be in the insurance, because some of the consumers also not enough to have extra insured, which is not necessarily. And we also want that the person who bet in one industry can be captured in other industry. So we won't let the person who commit a violation or crime in capital market cannot be captured in insurance and non-bank financial institution. So what I can say that the coordination and proceeding law, but with this again, there is always ways for the financial industry to commit the violation and crime. And we have to learn a lot from them. And it's just like chasing, chasing the wild pig in the forest. So we have to be smart enough, not to catch, not to lose our wild pig to go away without our presence. So we have to fill all the gap, like all the laws with the no man's land and everything. We have to come up so there is no regulatory and supervisory arbitrage which could happen in our supervisory action. Thank you.
Still mute. Sorry, I was still mute. Do you mind to take more questions, Pak Sarjito?
Okay. Okay.
Okay. A few more. First is there are many teenagers. This one is a question from Darren. There are many teenagers who want to invest but are not old enough to have their own account. And finally, by the time they're old enough, they're lost interest. So why is there no program like youth savings in the bank? Oh, okay. The second question is there any firm action from OJK for influencers who often provide stock recommendations with the aim of increasing the price of related shares? That was, or better known as pom-poms. That is from Ayu Kirana. And from Pak Nur Firmansyah dari Fakultas Hukum UNAN, in connection to the disgorgement and disgorgement fund, which is to be implemented in the near future, which institution will be authorized to implement the regulation? And is it going to be within the scope of SIPF or OJK? Or is OJK going to establish a new institution to implement the regulation? The next question is still related and from the same participant, Pak Nur Firmansyah. In the delisting mechanism, voluntary and forced, which is under POJK number 3, 2021, regarding penyelenggaraan di bidang pasar modal. How does the investor protection, how will it work in connection to the forced delisting executed by IDX? And whereas the buyback mechanism is only applicable for voluntary delisting. So what he was saying is there is no buyback mechanism for forced delisting, only for voluntary delisting. And the last question is, what do you do in relation to investor protection when a listed company has been declared bankrupt? He says there is no regulation explicitly regulate this in the capital market law or OJK regulations.
Okay. Lots of questions and all good questions, and thank you so much. And the first, Darren, with the, sometimes there is I read the book in the past, what we call that investing in the capital market is like throwing the dart. You throw the dart, monkey throws the dart, it may result the same way. So it's tough investing in capital market. Anyway, to make it different, as I mentioned earlier, that we provide all the curriculum for the student from the early life, even from the kindergarten, before kindergarten until universities. And we want this as a mandatory. Why then we need mandatory? because we are fed up with all the information and overwhelmed with the information. And if there is only an option, nobody will take care of. That's why we need to provide lots of things to make this financial education is interesting and compelling. And the thing is that the step for the youth to know the capital market is first, a student or people must understand, like a bank investment, which is like time deposit and things like that. And we have also a program what we call SIMUDA, which is youth. Is a hybrid, not only the saving, but also with the investment. So we gradually educate our people, our students, and the society from the simple type of the saving plan until into the mixed hybrid with the investment, because we have to be frank enough. Putting the money in the bank will not make you rich, because it's not investment, but putting the money in the bank is saving. If you save in Japan, so you have to pay because of deflation. And now, with type of SIMUDA and all those kind of things that we provide further education for the student and also for the society with a gradual way. So, but the question is sometimes, even Josephine Wong, when we educate people here in Indonesia, they don't understand mutual fund is like ibu-ibu mothers household. And when I present something, they ask me about Bitcoin, which is much complicated one. And I said, Ibu, Mom, you have to learn from the putting your money in the bank, mutual fund, investing in the equity instrument, and others, and probably into the securities crowdfunding, which is more complicated. That's why the literacy and inclusion index in the capital market still low, because capital market is of course more complicated. And the second question about the influencer. This is a very good question, because in the past, I think currently we had some influencers recommend a certain stock, which is the question is that do they understand the consequences? So they are subject to a criminal offense in the capital market law, because a person must be very careful in stating something, because it may influence the price of the share. It may influence the price of the share to be up, stay, or down. So if it's only that because it's not careful enough to give statement, and if he realized that the statement will be followed by a lot of people and it could be misled, so it's subject to the criminal provision, criminal offense there is a criminal provision in the capital market law, that can be, bring the influencer into unnecessary and inappropriate condition, which is so. So I advise the influencer, be careful before you speak, and then you speak only for something that you really understand. You really understand, not the material information that you don't understand, and you speak to the group in the social media. And the second advice to the society and the consumers, that you must be very careful on the influencer thing, because you must check, do they the person who really understand the capital market or not, on only that they speak something that you follow. So please, the follower must be conscious and understand the consequences of the following the influencer. And the third question about the disgorgement. Disgorgement is very good thing. I remember when I was in capital market, I was very interested in this case of the disgorgement, because the disgorgement is actually the ill-gotten money that brought by the perpetrators or the doers who commit the violation of crime in capital market must be given back to the society, which is a part of the civil remedy or the civil action, which is good. And in the US, disgorgement is not easy. It may take years. I think Josephine Wong may add this. It may take years to take the money back from the perpetrators, the fraudulent in the capital market. So the question where the fund will be put. We are still discussing on the disbursement because some also may not agree that OJK is easy enough to pull out the disbursement because in other jurisdiction, mainly in even the common law, they have to be brought back in the civil action. And we try to make it simple because everywhere in the world, not only in Indonesia, dealing with the court is not easy because there is a check and balances and it's not easy. It's not like the flipping the hand and take the money back. So disbursement, I believe, so far not under the SIPF, and it will be, form a new probably institution, which is it will be administered by appointed and by OJK, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's we are following the situation. And then the next question will be the delisting mechanism on the POJK number 3, 2020. How about the voluntary delisting? The question is that, are there a lot of issuers which is listed in the Indonesia Stock Exchange that will voluntarily delist? Normally delisting, done because of the problem, and then reserve force and kick them out from the market because they're not fulfilled anymore on the requirement of the stock exchange. But anyway, in the past there was a mineral bottle company which is very famous, which is we name Aqua, is a voluntary delisting. And of course, in that case, in a voluntary delisting, there is an obligation that the company must buy back all the outstanding shares. And in the case of Aqua, this is one this is the name of the trademark in Indonesia, I think leading mineral water company, which is at that time even the prevailing market price is, for example, is 10,000 Indonesian rupiah. They want to buy even 10 times and things like that. So voluntary delisting for a healthy company would be good. But how about the voluntary delisting for a sick company? How about the sick company? The ratio, the ratio debt to equity or debt to total asset is already in such a way like 2 or 3, even 4. So it is easy to say that voluntary delisting that they must buy back all the outstanding shares, but they don't have the money. So how about the forced delisting? Forced delisting is like what the Indonesia Stock Exchange does normally, because probably the OJK said that you kick out from the market, but the forced delisting normally because the company or the issuer does not fulfill further requirement from the stock exchange, and that's why not like the voluntary delisting that they have to buy back all the outstanding shares. And then, okay, how about the forced delisting a company who declare bankruptcy? This is not easy to answer. Lots of companies, lots of public, not lots of, some public companies, they force because of the forced by the stock exchange to out from the market because they did not fulfill all the requirements. And normally stock exchange already gave them time to provide more and to fulfill until a certain time. And or normally this is also the company who are sick companies that I mentioned before, who normally did some violation and crime, then eventually they are forced by the stock exchange and who declare bankruptcy. This is what is the protection for the consumers? For those who are already forced by stock exchange to be out from the market, of course, this is not good for the public company shareholders because they cannot has the prevailing market price in the stock exchange. So they deal with the the controlling shareholders and also the management, which is, yes, I agree with you. The protection is not easy because there is no more stock exchange over there, and there is, but still under the OJK, because as long as the public company may list or not list in the bourse or in the stock exchange. So for those who are previously listed in the stock exchange and then kicked out by stock exchange, that's still a public company. So they have to follow all the rules and regulations. Okay. So so for those who are forced by the stock exchange, for those of you public company shareholders, you still become public shareholders until nothing else. So I mentioned earlier, so for those who are forced delist by the stock exchange, you as a minority shareholders still keep the shareholders. Even I one day become an expert in a constitutional justice proceeding in the past on the what you call the right of the a bank who already become a negative equity, which is there still the right of the shareholders for those banks who are under the Indonesian FDIC? And I said yes, and it was right back on the legal background, because still become shareholders in whatever condition. Thank you. I hope that I answered some of the question. Thank you, Risa. Thank you, Risa. I'm done. Are you with me? I'm done, Risa.
Thank you very much, Pak. Sorry. Thank you so much. There were a lot of questions, and thank you so much for taking the time to answer all of them. And we have arrived to the third speaker, which is Pak, who is Pak Narotama. And the question is, hang on, bear with me. Let me read them. Okay, these are the questions for Pak Narotama. Regarding the SIPF membership fee, please explain what are the benefits of the securities company paying SIPF membership dues, and what if the securities company is an SIPF member and pays regular contribution, but no claim has been submitted to SIPF? What is the contribution of fund, and can it still provide benefits to the securities company directly in other forms? The second question is from Hendrik. As for my cash balance in my RDN account, the customer fund account, is it covered by LPS or SIPF? And how will cash protection status will be in case the brokers borrow, in case a brokers, stock exchange members borrow the cash in their customer account, which is, he said, a general practice in one of the big local broker. The next question is there any cases handled by SIPF that caused the DPP to be paid to investor? If any, what are they? And how much of the membership fee paid by each member to DPP to get investor protection mechanism? How much membership fee paid by each member of DPP to get investor protection mechanism? How far do you have control over your members, and what are the things that you do to make sure that your members are following the rules? What solutions you can provide if I have more than the compensation limit you set So, you know, the loss is more than the maximum compensation limit. And what are the next steps you can prepare? Learning. I sent you the question already, right?
Yes.
So I'm just reading it for the audience.
Okay.
You can answer it. You can just pick and choose, you
Okay.
know, with whichever you want want to answer.
Maybe I will answer.
These are two last questions. What?
Okay.
Let me just finish the last questions first. What are the next steps you can prepare learning from SIPC SIPC system? What can we adapt from them? Do you think you could reach the level where SIPC is, or at least LPS is in the future, considering the market cap of Indonesia capital market? So those are the questions. I've sent them to you, and you can select which one you would like to answer first.
Maybe I will answer the first question first, Bu Ica. The first one, it's a nice question. The membership fee, maybe the function of Indonesia SIPF is to increase the level of investor confidence in the securities of investing in the capital market and to provide legal certainty. I repeat, legal certainty if any event of loss of customer asset. Maybe it's the main function related to this question. And related to our mission, Indonesia SIPF, to improve investment security in the capital market through the establishment of investor protection fund. As I said before, the picture of airbags, the compare the significance of protection with the needs of having the airbags in our cars. We don't know the even in the future, but we must have airbags and we don't want to use it. Maybe that is the answer for me, Bu Ica, for the question number one. Number two, as I look, RDN atau rekening dana nasabah. As I said before, in the slide in protection scheme in Indonesia capital market, Indonesia SIPF protect that asset that recorded by KSE. RDN or rekening dana nasabah is our protection as long as your account or your balance same as recorded by KSEI. That is my answer, Bu Ica, for the second question.
Okay.
The question, for your information, since we started operation in 2013, there has never been a case, alhamdulillah, there is loss of asset that requires a claim from our protection fund. But we hope there are no cases in the future. But what we should do? In last November 2020, we performed a claim simulation. We do this simulation in collaboration with OJK, SAO, and other stakeholders, and our members with real data, real investor, real simulation, and we make test case scenario, the simulation to identify the needs of improvement in our claim handling procedure, to make sure our procedure is valid and fine. Okay, next question. For the fee, for investor is total free, but we have our membership fee for our members of DPP. Consists of two membership fee. The number one is initial membership fee. It's 100 million rupiah. And annual membership fee, it's 0.001% of monthly average from previous year's total asset of investor from each custodian. That's our membership fee. The next question is the rule, if any. Okay. As I said in my presentation before, OJK or Indonesia Financial Service Authority is the highest institution in capital market. We do a lot coordination and communication with OJK, especially in protection area. We do a lot strategic research and we coordinate and communicate to OJK to develop our protection mechanism in Indonesia capital market. The last question is maybe the lesson learned from US SIPC. Like Pak Sarjito said before, there is a POJK 65. There is a process or the rules about disbursement fund. Maybe that is the process will be faced together to develop our protection in Indonesia capital market. Maybe that's enough for me, Bu Ica.
Yep. Thank you so much, Pak Narotama,
Yes. Yes.
for answering the questions. So finally, we have come to the end of the program. I would like to thank our guest speakers again, Ibu Josephine Wang, Pak Sarjito, and Pak Narotama for the great presentation and for answering the participant questions. And also, I would like to thank the conference participants for your active participation. It was a pleasure to have all of you with us today. I hope the presentation will be beneficial for everyone. I would like to apologize to participants whose questions we probably didn't have time to answer. Thanks again, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
I will return the